Hello everyone, welcome back to another Strategoy video. Ryan here with a special, I guess we could say New Year's treat, belated Christmas treat for everyone out there. We actually had a requester in the comments that had been asking for this specific tier list for at least 2 or 3 videos now. So I'm happy to report that we're here reporting and delivering on this this much requested tier list, at least by one person, the Tzeentch tier list. And I've got my buddy here, Hugo, who's one of my training for the Dutch Worlds team buddies, and just an all-around great player and great guy. Hugo, how's it going today, buddy? How was your what am I trying to say? Your holidays and everything.
Well, it's been pretty good. Yeah, no, I'm doing well. I'm excited for this. This is going to be interesting. I have lots of thoughts about Tzeentch, but I have played way too much of this book. Probably like 100 games with this current book. So now I'm excited to talk about it and to see what you think.
Yeah, and you were just mentioning that you are working on like a kind of like a guide for Tzeentch. Anyway, want to tell people about that a little bit?
Yeah, so I am quite active in the AOS Coach Discord, and over the past like 2 weeks, lots of people have been coming into the Tzeentch chat and asking just general questions. And I was talking to some other guys, and it's like, might as well just make like a general introduction guide to Tzeentch. So I've now typed roughly like 13,000 words about Tzeentch, all the artifacts, command traits, heroes, what do you want to do, and yeah, so I'm about like halfway through that. But yeah, so I've put up a lot of my thoughts on paper. But yeah, so that's all. You can find it in the AOS Coach Discord, where I'm also very active.
Nice. So, I mean, that kind of leads me to setting the stage question about how we're going to do this today. I imagine if you're spending all that time writing such like a thorough document, you're probably trying to keep an eye out for not only how the meta is right now, and how, with 3rd edition probably passing away in a few months, but also the GHB with it. But at the same time, obviously you want it to be kind of evergreen, probably, that at least as long as this book is out and the rules stay relatively similar in 4th edition. I'm assuming you're hoping that it's kind of just a living document that doesn't have to keep changing too hard. Am I correct in saying that, or are you writing it entirely just for the meta as it is now and plan on changing it entirely once it changes?
No, it's more evergreen, mainly because the artifact and command traits and stuff that doesn't change, and that is not affected by points. It might be slightly affected by what the current season is and what it wants of you, but the entire split of the book and who can take what and what are you looking for is still going to be the same. So if a unit is completely terrible right now because it doesn't do anything, with a change of GHB that isn't changing anything. It might bump it up to maybe you take this once in a while, but good stuff is still going to be good, unless they like jack up the points crazily, and the bad stuff is still going to be bad unless they reduce its points by like half. So it's also more an explanation of, okay, why is something good and in what kind of strategy do you want to use a certain unit, and if you're going to use a certain unit, how do you get the most out of it on the table? So and because of those rules are not changing, that's still going to be stay the same.
Nice. And how would you like to approach the video today? You think, I mean, obviously we only know what we know. I've been saying in at least the other video that I did that the goal here is not to be ranking everything according to all the other books, so external balance, but more internal balance against itself. So the scale from avoid to awesome here that we've been using, that's going to be based off of compared to what else you can take in the book. Do you feel like that's fair, or do you want to approach it a different way?
No, I think that's fair, because lots of the units are, you want to take, especially in Tzeentch, you have a certain role that you need to fill, and that can be, I need this artifact, I want this spell, I need this hammer, and that can be filled in multiple different ways. And if you compare, like, there's some things you can bring outside of the book, like from slaves to darkness, but that's not really useful here. It's about, okay, how good are the certain units in the Tzeentch book doing the main strategies that work at the moment? Because you can think about, oh, maybe this would work in a different strategy, but if that's not doing well, then the unit might not be good after all. So I think that's a good idea.
Okay, cool. And so the different tiers that Jonas came up with for the original Lumineth video that we started this series with, I guess, instead of being S tier all the way down through letter grades, obviously we see awesome at the top. And he wanted to avoid using auto take as a keyword here because, hopefully in a healthy book, there are enough builds where there isn't a single unit that you have to take every single time you play. That said, obviously, we're going to mention some things probably in that category that would come pretty damn close to being an auto-include, if not literally something everyone takes every time. And then moving down, I think it's pretty obvious, with the exception of maybe niche. I find niche to be less a gradation of quality and more a indication of that something could actually be really strong, but in a very specific scenario. And so in this way, we're almost more framing it as what's the utility curve look like this for different units in general. And even avoid doesn't mean you shouldn't play it if you want to play it. If you're a painter type person who just wants to see it on the field, of course go ahead and play it, but you're probably not getting max efficiency out of it. And so we're going to be probably looking at this more with an eye to competitive play and how to get the most out of your army. But not even just competitive play. I would say on some level, if you're just trying to play casually and you really want to use a unit, but let's say you go with a Flamers build and you take a unit that has nothing to do with that build at all, if we were only talking about the Flamers build, we'd put it down in avoid, even though in another build it might be amazing, right? Obviously, that's not how we're doing it. We're not doing it per build, which could be interesting to do. Now, Hugo, how do you feel about the meta with Tzeentch right now? Does it feel like a lot of our units are, in fact, usable, or do you think there's some real obvious, must takes and must not takes here?
So the current Tzeentch has two main paths that try to roughly do the same that are doing well, which is the Guild of Summoners Summon All the Chickens build, and it is the more Host Arcanum control build. They are trying to do roughly the same things, but in a slightly different way. So I think looking at that, there are definitely certain units that are just horrible because of their War Scroll. There are certain units that are just not good because of either their build or their points or just what they do. And there are certain units that I think there's one unit that would become almost an auto-include because it makes an entire build work. So I think there's definitely certain things that are great. There's certain things that are all right, and I think most of them, except maybe one unit, is just fine to take. Especially in a casual game, you can take anything. It's fine.
Right. Yeah, what's interesting is I feel like a lot of what's going to end up coloring our decisions here, even if we mean not to, is going to be the state of the meta and the army books that are popular and strong right now, just in general. And when I think about the game right now, so traditionally I've done, if I had to do a computation of some unit's output, I did it against a 4-up save. But honestly, 3-up saves, either because there's a 4-up that went to a 3-up or an actual 3-up just with no all-out defense or anything, is probably more common nowadays in competitive play. Maybe not in Tzeentch. Obviously, we don't have access to that kind of save very often. But against a lot of other armies, that's something that's changed. So, for example, I actually tabled a ton of people playing Eternal Conflag in 3rd edition, not even the old 2nd edition version. In fact, I think that was our first game that we played was when I was playing Eternal Conflag. Is that right?
Yeah, it was at the Bloodstorm a year ago. That was our first game, yeah.
Yeah, and it was a close game, too. You were playing a more Zangor build, if I'm not mistaken, at the time. But
yeah, I've always liked Zangor, and especially when they had GV fighting in 2 ranks, that was... Yeah, but yeah, right. I always play Zangor.
So the thing about the what's it called, Eternal Conflag list is that it just doesn't have enough rend anymore. And if you rely on Purple Sun or Arcane Suggestion or something to turn off CP use, then we're in a magic season that's going to turn that off and get rid of that stuff. And so it's kind of this 1-2 punch that killed the ability for those units to actually shine. So clearly you're a Zongor guy, even though that doesn't necessarily mean that you think they're the strongest units in the game right now. But you have you have kind of a soft place in your heart for Zongors, and I have a soft place for the Flamers build. And so when I'm going to talk about it, I'll probably try to, at least say what it is outside of this meta, or what it has been in the past, what it can be if, say, save stacking, or if just saves get worse for some reason over time, or even if the magic season falls off. There are certain sub-factions out there that I think get significantly better as soon as kind of the meta evolves around it. It has nothing to do with the current book itself. So as far as internal balance is concerned, it's more flexible than it might look after we finish up the chart today. Would you agree with that? Do you think that's a safe assessment here, or do you think? Yeah,
I think that's fair. That's fair because of the way that the current GHB rules work, where it's incentivizing small foot heroes that are not unique. We have some good unique heroes. They automatically get a tier worse because of that. Because of the primal dice making all Unbinding worse, getting stuff that is autocast, that is not interactable for, let's say, magical dominance or something like that, automatically becomes better. Because of the high casting value of some of the spells, having autocast stuff becomes better. Because of Horfrost, let's say, some of the melee units become better. So I think that definitely changes, and I think that, with the save stacking at the moment, and with just everybody running around either on 3-up saves or whole units regenerating, or both, in certain cases, it can be rough for some of the builds that are out there. But I think in most games you can still do well. But also a big thing, why Tzeentch does well is because it scores points super easily. We have, I think, the only grand strategy in the game that is auto-completable turn 0 without your opponent doing anything. You could realistically make a build that does 5 book tactics, and it should kind of be fine. It's not going to be amazing, but it can work. So because Tzeentch scores points so well, if you don't lean into the scoring points well, you're just paying more for your units than you're supposed to be, and you're just going to have a rough time. So that's also why you see, like, the Guild of Summoners build, it opens up another book, another tactic. It's just more of the value engine, and I think that's, if you're not leaning into that, you're automatically going to become worse. But if, let's say, battle tactics go away, they might become better again.
Yeah, that's totally fair. And obviously, I don't know if you saw it, but for those out there, I did a video about battle tactics recently and how to kind of think about those and write your list for your battle tactics. And I know it's one of the things that on Warhammer Weekly recently, they were talking about how they just want they want to see the whole battle tactics system scrapped and rebuilt for 4th edition. So I'm curious to see if that still holds, if their dream comes true, that in 4th edition, we're less dependent on that way of winning, and then we just have to play on primaries. So that, I don't know if our army is necessarily a primaries army, except for horrors, So I don't know. We'll have to see. But before we get any further in this, I just want to remind everyone listening to do all that normal YouTube stuff. Hit like, share, and subscribe. We're actually talking in Discord right now, and Hugo said that he's busy on Discord too, so maybe we could get him to answer a few questions if you guys have any. And also thanks to Sneaky Beak for the recommendation for this video. And
that's good. Yeah, I am always open to answer questions in this Discord or anywhere else, or I'll jump into the YouTube comments as well. I'll answer some questions there if there are any.
Awesome. All right, so let's start off with the big boy himself, Mr. Kairos Fate Weaver. Hugo, I'm curious. Let's see what you got to say about this big boy. What are your thoughts? Where does he belong?
Alright, so what does Kairos bring? Kairos is the only native 3-caster in the book, and that is important because of the battle tactic. Mm-hmm. He is probably, so that both the birds are the best spellcasters in the book. So that's already very good. Both of the chickens have the best damaging spell in the book, aside if you take Blizzard, but yeah, it's just reliably 6 mortal wounds. It's very good. I think he's very good. I think now that the normal bird went down in price, it's more of a toss-up between if you want to take one or the other, depending on points. I think he is either top of strong or bottom of awesome, just because of what he does and what he brings for the army. And I think you always run at least one of the birds baseline.
Sure.
So I think Kairos is either top of strong or bottom of awesome.
Okay, yeah, I'm good with that, and we can change the list as it goes. I think he's in the list. There we go. Cool. Can you see that on the screen? Is that clear for everyone? Good. All right. So I think that's a good starting point. And then I don't know if you mentioned getting the extra fate dice or not, the destiny dice, but that's obviously really important.
Yeah. So the 60 extra point. I think it's 60 points at the moment that Kairos gets you. It's the extra destiny dice, which is just destiny dice is how we win the game by legally cheating. And the extra cost. So the extra cost is not as useful because you don't really have a very great third spell you want to usually cast. It's more the battle tactic and then the extra destiny dice. So is it worth 60 points? I think it is. If you have the points, spend it. But the normal bird is just fine. You can put the 9-Eye Tome on him for full rerolls. He still gives you Infernal Gateway. He still gives you entire access to the demon lore. So I think both of them are good. I think the normal one is a little bit worse than Kairos, personally. But yeah, there's an entire strategy made around summoning them. But just putting them in your list, I think he's slightly worse.
Now, do you find that points are tight enough when you're list building that those 60 points make a difference for you? If you were thinking about having Kairos, but you downgrade to a Lord of Change just for, squeezing something else in or making your list work? Is that
yes? Sometimes, like in Tzeentch, everything is expensive because you have a great summoning engine. So sometimes you can't really fit it in. Especially if you're running the Guild of Summoners build, where getting the free cast tactic is less important because you have an extra tactic to do. It might be better, and especially if you don't want to take the Demon Spark command trait, you need a good target to put it on. And so if you're running that kind of build, the normal chicken might just be fine because you're just getting out more value for your value engine. And but I think if you're running a Host Arcanum build, getting the extra 60 points is definitely worth it.
Okay, so where are we putting the normal bird?
I think at least just like a tier below right. So I think he's in strong. I think the problem is if putting him in your list is not something you would want to do, but you want to summon them as many as possible.
If you're playing Guild of Summoners,
Yeah. But if you're playing Guild of Summoners, that's your entire idea that you want to do.
Mm-hmm.
So I think the War Scroll itself is very good. I think they're overpriced for what you get what you pay for, but they're still needed because of what they bring to the army as a whole. So I think just the normal bird is one step below. With the points drop, he's a bit more interesting, but I think he's still a little bit below Kairos.
Yeah, and which weapon do you take on him if you summon him?
That depends. Getting the sword with flaming weapon is kind of cool because then you have a -2 damage 4, like a rend 2 damage 4 weapon. That's pretty cool. It's only 3 attacks, but if it's a bit matchup dependent. The Rod of Sorcery also works just fine. It's a bunch of shots. I almost never take the talons and the beak. That's just not something you either go. You get flaming weapon with the sword, or you take the rod. Both are fine.
Yeah, it's interesting because, in a certain sense, in terms of whether you're going to use him all the time or not, like I feel like the question that comes into mind when you've got a unique version of something and a generic version of something, as we do here, that obviously with the generic version you can take a command trait or you could take an artifact, and the weird thing about Tzeentch is I don't know if that's actually something you want to put on a bird. Is there anything that you would put on a Lord of Change that would help convince you that he's better because he can take a command trait or an artifact over Kairos?
Yeah, so I think in Guild of Summoners, if you need the extra, if you want the reliability of getting that bird out turn 1, getting Demon Spark is it can be very good.
And
Also,
that's the
get,
+3 fate points or whatever, right?
yeah, that's once per game plus 3 fate points, and because that is a command trait, you cannot really there's not real other good units you can put it on. You're giving up quite a bit though, because the two best command traits are mortal bound. So, um, but it can make your summoning strategy way more reliable. As for artifacts, there are just not that many great artifacts. Eternal Shroud for the 5+ Destiny Dice regen is fine. The 9-Eye Tome for rerolls is it's solid, but it's I don't know. It with the rerolls being less valuable at the moment due to the interaction with the primal dice. It's I don't know. I think I personally really like having a mortal general or an arcanite general for one of the two arcanite command traits. Yeah, but I've seen lists do well that use Demon Spark and that use 9-Eye Tome on him specifically to get the turn 1 way more reliably.
Okay. So yeah, sometimes I guess I was thinking about the mortal stuff as you mentioned, and we'll get to those later. But this is one of those cases where I feel like it doesn't really matter so much that you've got the bird being able to take those two things. Whereas if you look at like Ideneth, which I'm about to do a tier list for Ideneth, the difference between Volturnos and the Achillean King is very strong, because you can take some very important artifacts and command traits on the king, and mount trait for the matter. But anyway, okay, so we've covered the birds. Now we're going to move on to, as you described them, the change caster on different methods of transportation, if you will. What was the other way you described them? The herald. Right?
Yeah, the horror heroes. That's
Yeah.
how I usually say them. The horror heroes. Yeah. So, they all get the same ability. Once per game, you get to reroll a cast at +3. It's pretty good. All of their spells are usually fairly good, but yeah, having it be reroll because later in the book we're gonna see something roughly the same, but it's an extra cost. That's currently in the season better than the reroll because of the interaction with primal dice. But indeed, it's all horrors. Also, I think because the chickens get access to the full demon lore, you're not really picking them to get a a demon lore spell. It means that their war scroll spell has to be good. That's why you're picking them. And there they just kind of disappoint sometimes. Like one of them is just let's just start at Fate Skimmer. So what does he do? He has a pretty good spell with a extremely high casting value of 9. That is very rough. 2 up D3 mortals to everything, that's good, but it's only 9-inch range. So that means that you either have to get Spell Portal, which I like, but I usually want to throw something else through the Spell Portal, or you have to throw them up like real close. And because it's 9-inch, that means that the enemy has to walk into it. You cannot set it up, you cannot pre-plan it, or you have to like double, but banking on a double is always a bad idea.
Yeah.
That means he's just not a great. He doesn't do anything you want him to do. Like you don't want to get him into melee. He's still only 8 wounds on a 4-up. He's not as bad as he used to be because they got his price by like I don't know, like 40 points or something. He's now 150. But yeah, so I think he's very niche. His War Scroll spell is just not doing it enough. You have to invest way more points into him. So yeah, I just don't like him that much.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously he turns on chariots as battle line, but that would be just a total meme list if you were to like have him and then just only chariots. Or even in Eternal Conflag, it doesn't really make that much sense to turn the chariots on as battle line, because you'd have flamers as battle line, and you're fine. So I personally would put him in a void. I think, even though there's a part of me that wants to see that be good, it just isn't. I actually thought for a hot minute when he was listed, wrongly listed as a monster in the book, that could have been interesting. I was like, oh, okay, cool, why not? But yeah, do you agree with me that he kind of belongs in a void?
I think with the points cut, he sneaked out of a void and into niche. Okay, like he does all right. Like he's he's pretty fast. He's actually like also pretty tanky for what you get for the 150 points. I just think that now that he's cheap enough where he's actually not like that much more expensive than the other units, and that some of the other units have went up that you would really want to take in his place. I think he can work. He's a little bit more build around, but I don't think he's avoid at all costs as some of the other units. No.
Okay. All right. Cool. So, moving on to the Fluxmaster, the one on the disc, who had a huge glow up from the second book to the third one, in my opinion. You pretty much never saw him in the second edition book, but in the third edition book, he's got that spell that's basically generating, you know, on average 4 fate points for you if you get the spell off. So, what's what's your opinion of this guy? Obviously, similar build.
I ran him a lot, especially at the start. I think he's good. I think in this GHB, some of the things changed around him that made him a bit worse, with the change to chromatic cogs no longer giving you full rerolls, and with the change to the way unbinding through the spell portal works. I think he's solid. I ran him at an RTT 2 months ago. He did work, but he mainly did work as a holder of Blizzard and Horfrost. So I think he's good, but the way the current interactions work with magical dominance, with the spell portal being able to unbind just from the portal, not stay outside of unbind range, I think he went down a tier. I think, especially at his old price point, he used to be an awesome. I think he's currently in either the bottom of strong, maybe top of solid. Just he's a little bit too expensive. He's just not reliably anymore without cogs. He can definitely work, but I'm a bit more down on him than I was at the start of the book.
Okay, that's fair. I'm gonna lean towards saying that whatever you say goes for right now, and then we can kind of discuss at the end. I personally am trying to see him outside of the current GHB a bit. Of course, we have no idea what's coming, but I would say his War Scroll itself is very strong. Like, I feel like if you take him outside of the given meta, that's kind of where he belongs. So, do you feel like you want to put him at the bottom of strong or somewhere in solid? What are you thinking?
I think then, which says correct, I think then he belongs at the bottom of strong. I think he's just, like, his War Scroll is just solid. He has a very good spell that you really want in your list, because it's just very good. I think it's a little bit tight on points at the moment, but yeah, I think he's very good. He is... I like him a lot. Just a little bit expensive at the moment, but yeah.
Sure. And someone else who changed going from the second book into the third, in a way that was disappointing for me, as someone who was running Guild of Summoners back then, is the Changecaster on foot, who used to be able to cast unlimited spells so long as you got like a modified 9+ or something on every one of them, but it was easy to get the guy extra bonuses to cast, and I easily got off 7 spells in a row, every once in a while with the guy. But now he's changed basically to just be a footcaster that's got a spell that can make save worse. Now, the question I have is, when you're trying to lower drops in Tzeentch, and you're only trying to take like 3 heroes to get like a 1-drop list or something like that, how often is this guy actually being your choice? Because the -1 to save is great, but that's mainly only good for units that can actually get in there and do some combat stuff. And we're not exactly a combat army, or that are good at shooting, but like I said, Eternal Conflag is just kind of in a weird place right now. So how do you rate this guy at this moment?
Yeah, so my nickname for him used to be the Chaincaster instead of the Changecaster. He just chain spells all over the place. So I think Changecaster, he is great, but in the wrong book. I think he has actually seen some play in Slaves to Darkness as an ally, because they really like the extra rend. I have tried to make him work in some of my Zangor heavy builds. He just doesn't cut it. If you want him, just summon him turn 1. He is just not something I'm willing to pay the points for, and especially because turn 1 you're never really gonna get his spell off in a useful spot. If you want him, just summon him. That's all I really have to say about him. He's solid enough, but he doesn't really work in Tzeentch.
So he costs 12 fate points, so that means he's competing with even cheaper unit of 10 blue horrors that could split. Do you feel like that is a good summon?
Yeah. So it's kind of like how Nurgle summoning the Piper turn 1. I think if you have a strategy that really wants him, um, you're either just not taking him and taking a Purple Sun, you're not taking him and taking Arc's Suggestion, or you have some of that and then you summon him turn 1 where you're like looking to burn someone out turn 2 with the giant push play. Where then those 150 points can be used to make your just like your all-in stronger. I don't think that's very good at the moment with like Flamers or with Zangor. I think there's way better plays you can do that, but I think that might be a play. But that's about the best case scenario I have for him. I tried him. I just don't think he's worth it.
Yeah, okay. And that's really interesting to think of him as an ally option in another Chaos army. Who all can take Tzeentch anyways? Slaanesh and Slaves. Anyone
Slaanesh,
else?
Slaves. I don't know if Beast of Chaos can. I'm not entirely sure, but I've seen him mainly in Slaves. Like, Slaanesh has enough ways to get -1 saves, that's fine.
Yeah.
But in with like 10 Chosen, getting them an exortment is very good. He's more of a less input required. He's just, okay, 150 points as an ally. You see Chaos Gargants there sometimes. I don't think he's amazing, but he has seen some play there, just for the -1 save. But that's why he's in the wrong book.
Sure. And I just looked it up. Beast can only take Slaves, so and Skaven can only take Nurgle of the Chaos factions. Okay, so where are we putting this guy?
I think he goes just above the Fate Skimmer. I think he's better than the Fate Skimmer. He's now the same points because he actually has but they're like roughly even for me. They're just not what I want in my list.
Yeah, how much is the speed an important part to the Fate Skimmer? Like,
not. I like it. It's nice, but if you want fast heroes, there's much better stuff.
That's true.
Like the stuff on this, like the Flux Master himself moves 16, so he moves 2 inches further. There's a bunch of the you can take a blue scribes for 10 points more, or like there's better stuff if you want a fast summoning and like a summoning platform. So yeah, I just it's nice, but it's not amazing.
Okay, cool. So moving on to Mr. Worthless himself. The changeling, not to spoil my opinion, but I can tell you right now, I'm already telling you he's an avoid, so at least in my opinion.
Oh, 100%.
Okay, but it's sad because there was a time back in 2nd edition when we had the, I forget what it was called, the War Scroll Battalion that let him, he could be one of the guys that would deep strike, and you'd have the other guys that would deep strike with him. What was that called? Or you would teleport or whatever with all the Lord of Change. Change host, exactly. How the mighty have fallen. He is a 2-caster, but he doesn't know any spells. I mean, he can learn a demon spell. And then like he's got that deep strike thing, but he's just a sitting duck ready to die. And unless you, I guess, get a double turn, you're not going to be able to do anything. He's unique though, so you can't take. Can unique characters learn Hoarfrost? No, right? I mean, Merciless Blizzard? No. So none of that. So what are you doing with this guy? What's he do? Just casting an endless spell? Is that the idea?
You cannot even cast an endless spell because he comes on at your hero your movement phase.
Right, after the double, yeah.
So like he comes. So he doesn't know his spell, War Scroll spell, which is like stupid. He has access to the demon lore, so you cannot take any of the good spells you want on him. He has. His ability comes in at the worst time. The only reason you take him is to fuck over your Iron Jaw's friend by deploying him in the center and stopping all their mighty destroyers, and that's about it. Like, he's just absolutely worthless. He's avoided at all costs. He's the worst unit in the book.
It's a very cool model, and
he's amazing, and like he's amazing in 40k at the moment, but he's just they have to like start again. Like his ability is fine, but in the previous book, he got to cast spells from that the enemy knew within 9 inches, so you could actually set him up and then like do a searing white light or something like that. Try to do some cheesy stuff with that. But now that he does like half movement, it's just not it.
All right. Speaking of units that used to know or used to be able to learn enemy spells, we've got the Blue Scribes. I never really got to play these guys in the meta that I wanted to play them in, which was when they were in 2nd edition. not only learning those spells. I did play it a little bit, but also the what was it? They had their War Scroll spell at the time was like cast on a 4 and then projected a bubble of +1 to cast or rerolls or something like that in the second edition book. And then Kairos used to know all of your own spells for all the wizards that were within a certain distance. So you could just have Kairos cast it and then have this guy auto cast something else on a 2+, which he still has that ability. Now all of that's been kind of moved around, and obviously the birds generate a big old bubble of +1 to cast, Dispel, and Unbind, so I guess it's fine. But I think it was rerolls that he used to give, right?
Yeah. I have to open. He gave rerolls on like a cast value of 4, which is like that's like the best spell in the game.
Sure, it was cogs, and obviously now we don't even have cogs, so that would have been useful. Like you said, rerolls in this season are kind of questionable. One thing I did want to say about the different Changecaster models' ability, once per game ability, is the reroll does kind of suck in this current meta, but adding +3 to it almost kind of makes up for it, right? Because +3 is not insignificant. So, it does mean you're not rolling a primal dice, but in a weird way, it's kind of like a reroll with a primal dice of a 3, like a free primal dice. In a way. So it could be worse, but you're right. Rerolls kind of suck right now. But back to the Blue Scribes. He's generating fate points every time an enemy wizard within 9 inches successfully casts a spell, and it's not unbound. But the thing is, it's only on a 3+, and how often do you want to get that fragile unit of yours up within 9 inches? Have you ever seen that go off? I mean, is that really worth taking to get the extra fate points?
No, I have never even rolled for this once because he's never within 3 inches or within 9 inches of an enemy wizard. It's like, and even if it maybe came up in my game, I totally forgot he had this. I've played him a decent amount in the current book, but yeah, that never came up.
So what are you using him for? What is his tactical purpose?
So he is the ultimate toolbox caster because he knows everything. He can get you almost anything. And his main idea is that he has just 2 up, I cast anything. So do you need that Arcane Suggestion somewhere? Okay, here it goes. Do you need a Shield of Fate somewhere? Here it goes. Do you need maybe even an extra Destiny dice from the Glimpse to Future? Here it goes. So that's his main. Yeah, so you want a 2+, you can basically cast anything you want. But because he's unique, you cannot take the good spells you would want to. Because he's mounted with the Lookout Surcharge, he's become a little bit worse. He's like fine. He's a toolbox caster. He's just not really something that can fit in most of my lists. I have other things I want to spend points on, but yeah, he is. You pay a lot for utility on him.
Okay. So what about for magical dominance? I mean, obviously he's got a better chance. He's like obviously an 83% chance of a spell going off, and it can't be unbound. Is that maybe something to be thinking about? Like, if you don't want to deploy super far back in that first turn, you don't have a whole lot of other spells you need to get off. Is that ever a consideration, or is it too risky not to be able to cast everything you need to cast in a given turn? Are you ever really going for magical dominance in Tzeentch?
Sometimes, but then because I usually play with Cult Demagogue, that's what I'm using to do. And any spell you're not casting is quite something you're giving up as a resource. So I tend to not cast Magical Dominance until turn 4 or turn 5, where the fate points don't really matter anymore. I can just pick 2 of my Destiny dice, here we go. Or I have a chicken somewhere where with not a lot of primals, or I've killed some of their wizards where they don't have Unbind. So that's not something I do too often turn 1. Like you have either cast 3 spells, or you have summon a chicken, or you have multiple different things you want to do turn 1. So that's not something I really value. It's mainly there for if you want to throw an endless spell out, or if it's just a higher chance to cast something, and especially it cannot be unbound. But yeah, you cannot use that on Blizzard. You cannot use that on Hoarfrost.
Sure.
It's
okay.
Yeah.
So where are we putting this guy?
I think he's solid. I think he's definitely better than the Changecaster. He's definitely better than the Fate Skimmer. He's a solid toolbox caster. He's just not something you're really looking to get this season. But in the previous season, I liked them quite a lot more.
Sure. Yeah, that's fair. Okay, so then we'd be moving on to the actual horrors themselves. I guess the changeling was, I don't know if he counts as a horror, but the blue scribes are definitely blue horrors. So now we're on to, I've split them into two categories. I've got them as pink horrors, the ones you actually are going to pay points for, and then blues brims are kind of squeezed onto one. We could talk about that later, but I wish there was a reason to split them into two different categories from blues to brims, but unfortunately there really isn't much of a reason. So pinks, first off, do you ever take them not splitting? Is there ever a reason to do that?
No.
No. Yeah.
Never ever.
Yeah.
Like
sure.
not even getting 10 brims and using them. The only reason you would ever is if you have a summon and you need to do like some mortal wounds into like maybe Morathi or something. I don't know. That's if you're paying for pinks, just always get split.
Sure. Okay, and how often do we summon pinks in place of blues? Does that ever happen that you end up summoning a unit of pinks? Do you get the points, or would you rather just, get them out earlier and then do more units of blues?
Yeah, so it's usually when I'm summoning, it's like 85 to 90% blues. If I'm not in a good of summoners, it's like 85 to 90% blues. It's like 5 to 10% pinks, and it's like the 1% is like, oh, I need some kind of hero somewhere or something else. But that's like so it's roughly like 5 to 10% where you either don't need the screen or it's against something like Corn, where summoning two sets of blues just isn't just giving them more value, and a big unit of pinks is just better. So it's a little bit matchup dependent, but most of the time, and especially against like newer players, I just say don't think about it, just always summon 10 blues. It's much better.
Sure. So where are pinks sitting? Like obviously split and split again, pinks, but where are they sitting on this chart? Are we talking awesome?
So I think they might be. I think they are a necessary evil.
Yeah.
You just need something that you can hold the enemy at bay with. That you can just put in front of someone and say, you're not getting through here unless you're putting major resources into this. They're a little bit less tanky than they used to be, just because the damage in the game has gone up quite a bit.
Yeah.
But I think they're still... I don't know if they're awesome, just because we have another choice for this role now in the Incarnate. And that just does something that nothing else can do. So they have been slightly pushed out of the book by the Incarnate. So I don't think they're awesome. I think they're just strong. I think they're very good. I think as a summon, they're decent. I think they're just top of strong.
Okay, top is strong. All right. Now, it's almost like if we were talking about these in a meta sense, you said like less, like kind of a necessary evil. There's a part of me that would say, well, is something on this chart also rated not only for tactical use, but also kind of like how we feel about it? So like, for example, I'm a big Mutileth Vortex Beast fan. I want that unit to be even better than it got. I will always think of that as a Tzeentch unit, even though it's not on this list. And so there's a part of me that almost wills it into being higher. And pinks, I feel like you might have put them in awesome had they not been a necessary evil. Like there are some people that win entirely because they lock people down with like a host duplicitous list and pinks. That's at least been a strategy in the past. But I feel like almost the kind of negative attitude that even a lot of us Tzeentch players have towards this unit. Like, do you know anyone that really enjoys playing with pinks and massive units? I know there's fast players like Tone and Morgan in our scene that play with them pretty quickly and don't seem to mind all the switching. But like Stephen Follows, that's on the English team, he used to live here in the Netherlands, and he would, every time I'd play him with the pinks, he would be just complaining. He's like, I hate playing this unit. I don't want to play it, but he's enough of a spike that he's just going to play it every single time to lock people down or to protect his units. Do you have any thoughts about that kind of like spectrum that we're all kind of battling with when you talk about them being a necessary evil?
I don't mind playing them. I think that with the splitting, you can do some cool stuff. You can pull it, like you can make certain screens that are normally not usable. You can split certain units in and out of range of like other attacks. I kind of like splitting. It's what a lot of people do is instead of like someone has multiple attacks or multiple profiles, and then they split after each profile. Just let someone say, okay, this is the total amount of damage. Okay, then I know how to split. Yeah, I don't know. I playing 30 doesn't sound like that much of fun, but then again, you're not playing much else, and you're just throwing them in your opponent turn one. Like, here, go deal with this. I feel like it's more that the opponents usually don't like it, where because it doesn't feel like you're killing anything, and it's just so many wounds. They feel often bad, but I don't know. I don't mind it. I think it's more the necessary evil comes from you need something to keep the opponent at bay. You need something to defend your castle, and pinks are realistically the only real thing in the book that can do that.
Sure.
Yeah, but I just think that because of the damage that has gone up in the game entirely, they dropped from awesome to strong. Just because they're not as tanky as they used to be.
Okay. So moving on to blues and implicitly brims, the thing I was going to say about them is anyone that knows the rules is you can technically mix units, but the cost of whatever your unit is based off of what the most expensive thing is that you've included. So you could technically make a unit of 1 pink and 9 blues, but it would still cost 250 points. Or something like that. I don't even know how that works exactly, but no one does it. In a similar way, you can actually take blues and brims separately for points, and I've always felt that the points cost of both of those units, especially brims, was just way too high, and I always kind of wanted them to say if you take them independently that they do something else, or at least drop the points, or maybe in Host Duplicitous make it so that blues are battle line, so that there was an option for a cheaper screen that you could have in the game, maybe. I feel like all three of those options would be something better than what we currently have, but at the moment, for those that don't know, pretty much the only reason you're taking blues is as a summoning target, as you mentioned, that you said like about 90% of your summons are blues. Is there ever a reason to summon brims?
No, realistically not. Like, yeah. There's niche cases where if you're... But just no. Just summon blues.
How many points would brims have to be? Because I think they're like at 120 or so right now. Maybe even higher. Let me see. Brims are 125 still. They're on a 5-point thing. How many points would they have to be for you to say that you would actually consider buying brims? Like with
it's rough because the reason why they're pointed this highly is because they don't want you to spam them all, and instead of like taking a big brick of pinks, just little units of brims everywhere, and just like so I don't think it's a very clear decision by GW to make them not cheap. I think they would have to be like, I don't know, like 60, 70 points. Sure. Like maybe if there were like 70 points, you might see them spammed and just like, oh, I just MSU. But we see other armies that have 70-point screens that don't do anything except die, that don't take them. So I don't know, like 60, 70 points. But yeah, it's the mixing and matching. I've done that once with the Galatian veteran season, where so bounty hunters didn't get the +1 damage because they turned off battle line. Oh. But yeah, that's the only thing I've ever done where you take 9 pinks and a blue, and then they're not battle line anymore. But yeah, that's also that's just like not worth it ever at the moment. Just take 10 pinks.
So let's use this circle here to describe just summoning blues. Where do we put them?
If you're awesome, just summoning blues, it's awesome. All right. It's you have to, like, it's what keeps you alive. It's what allows you to win games. If you're just talking about summoning, they're awesome. If you're talking about putting them in your list, it's a void. It's like there's no in between.
Sure. So let's because the actual practical way they're used is for summoning. So let's say that. But are we putting them higher than Kairos just because you're going to want to use them more often?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. That's right.
Yes, I think if you're just talking about summoning, I think they are the second best unit in the book.
Okay. All right. And so everyone else can know. Yeah, and so if we were talking about blues or brims for points or brims for summoning, we're putting them down in a void. So
Yeah.
okay, cool. So now we're moving on to the Eternal Conflag units, the three. We've got the different versions of Flamers. Do you have any strong opinions about this stuff?
Uh, Probably much less than you, because I've played one game of Eternal Conflict with Flamers, and then I found them to be just not good. Like the problem with Flamers here is that they're either too cheap and they can blow up anything turn one, or they're not cheap enough where they just die because you get for like what is it 170 points now, you get
Yeah.
3, so 6 wounds on a 4-up save. So yeah, but and also a big problem is that they require quite a lot of add-ons. Like you need an for just to make flamers work. You need to face your subfaction. You need to get an exalted flamer. You kind of need a fate master. You kind of need some kind of purple sun or something. So they require a lot of build around. They don't synergize with the battle traits. They don't generate fate points. They like if they whenever they killed killed a unit, they would generate a fate point or something that would have already been more interesting. They just don't synergize with what the book wants to do. So they're never going to be good enough. And the way they're currently as the ultimate glass cannons, they're either too cheap or they're not worth it.
Yes, I would totally agree, especially in the current meta, about Flamers in general. And you're totally right that you need all the support pieces. But the amount of fun I had playing this high risk, high reward alpha shooting list, which for those that don't know, you would also probably take a Gaunt Summoner that would teleport. He would put them in his castle, move up field, drop them at the end of the movement phase, and then they would be in range of, unless they screened out really well, a good chunk of their primary targets. Like I've never tabled people as consistently in 3rd edition as I did with my Eternal Conflag list. Like I even tabled Soulblight with Castellai, and that's including bringing his units back. And I think I generated something like 7 Chaos Spawns in that game, so I was also using that as a way of keeping people at bay. It was just such a fun list to play, and I just don't think it does what it wants to do right now. And it's got a lot of things that can counter it, even if the meta was different, because you've really got to get that double turn. You've got to be able to get all the things off. But there was a lot of play in that list, and it was super fun. But yeah, at this point, I would say no. If I were to just quickly say what I think of the 3 units, obviously Flamers are the strongest of the 3. You need them if you're going to be running that type of build. You need at least one Exalted Flamer, which would be either one of the other 2 options. But depending on how fast and how far upfield you're trying to go, I eventually switched to a more defensive build where I had like a line of Zongor and Lighten on foot that were just guarding my guys and turning off command abilities so that they wouldn't just get alpha'd. And which is also my only argument I would have for Zongor and Lighten on foot if you're playing a more castle-y kind of defensive build like that. Then you would have, in that case, you would take the normal Exalted Flamer on foot, like the regular one, not on the chariot. But if you're trying to get Alpha E and get up there, I would say the chariot version would be better. Unfortunately, the Exalted Flamers don't put out nearly as much damage as the big blocks of regular Flamers are doing in either groups of 6 or, if you really want to go crazy, 9. But they can do a lot of work as long as the save stacking isn't there and you can get your spells off. But I think right now we're probably putting these down in niche, I guess. Because there is some use, I think, in the future for these, but at the moment, you're building them for a very specific list. I might say that you would put them in a void. Is that fair? Where would you put all the Flamer units?
No, they're not a void. Like especially X and an Exalted Flamer next to them, just as an add-on, a more solo operative, they're totally fine. Like they do quite a good amount of damage. Like even into Stormcast, even into 3-up saves. It's just that if you want to consistently, like if on a 5-game event, if you want to make a consistent strategy, Flamers are just not it.
Yeah.
But they are nowhere near as bad as a Changeling. They do something. It's not really what the book wants to do, but they at least do something that is good. It's just they're a little bit too expensive. They require too much of an investment, not just as the Flamers. So, like, if you want to do Flamers, you have to go all in on Flamers.
Yeah.
So I don't think they're a void. I think they're niche.
Okay.
I agree.
Where are we putting them? Where are we putting regular flamers? Let's start with just the regular ones, because they're probably on top.
Yeah, I think the regular ones might go into solid, because they're the thing that you want to do, and they're the thing that they're going to do the heavy lifting. But it's just, and they are actually doing quite a lot of damage for what you get. They're just fragile as hell, and yeah, that's about it.
Do we put them under the blue scribes as I currently have it here?
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah. They're I think they're like bottom of solid. They're just they're all right. They just require too much investment.
Sure. And then the other two?
Yeah, niche. They are, because you have, if you're not taking flamers, you're not taking them. But you might take, like, if you have some points left over in a more casual game, you might just take 3 flamers or 6 flamers and not take any of the other stuff. So if you're taking flamers, you might take an exalted flamer. You're not taking exalted flamers if you don't take flamers.
Sure. And I would put them higher than the Fate Skimmer, just because I don't know when you're taking the Fate Skimmer.
Yeah, I also put them higher than the Fate Skimmer. It might even be higher than a Changecaster, but it's that they're definitely higher than the Fate Skimmer.
Okay, so let's do that. So unfortunately, we've got all the chariot kind of dudes hanging out here. Let's see. All right. I think that looks okay for right now. We can come back to it later. So moving on to the Screamers, which changed a lot from second to third. They used to have a little more utility, I feel, in second, and were cheaper too. How are you feeling about Screamers now?
I really like them. I think they're very good. I think they're super fast, so that's nice. Yeah. They become battle line in Host Arcanum, so that's just having a battle line option is always good. I think they're good. I think because Carrack Acolytes are currently very good in the current GHB, because you can deploy them on the line. You have an unbind, so you can stop magical dominance turn 1. They have slightly fallen out of favor, but I still see them popping up as unit of 3. Do surround and destroy. Be somewhere. I think they're top of solid, maybe bottom of strong. I kind of personally like them, but they're just not that used that often. But I kind of like them, yeah.
So this would be probably your best option for a surround and destroy unit, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. And especially considering you could take them in small units, they can get over somewhere and then come back and go steal something somewhere. Do you feel that you're doing surround and destroy in a Tzeentch list these days, or is that really not one of your main battle tactics?
No, it's not one of my main battle tactics, but I think having a single unit, it's solid. Like on certain battle plans, you always also want something fast that you can throw forward, like on limited resources, having something you can throw forward into the enemy, onto the enemy circles, and just like, okay, I'm taking this turn 1, so I'm not siphoning one of my own. I think that's good. So I think they're solid. They are not amazing. They are just like, I have seen someone try make 6 or 9 of them work. 6 can be worth it. 9 I don't ever think is good. But like 6 with Hoarfrost and then with Fault Reality, that's kind of interesting. I just don't think it's better than other stuff, but it's all right.
So do you think this is where they belong, is just before the Blue Scribes, or would you put them somewhere else?
Yeah, I think this is... Yeah, maybe just below the Fluxmaster. I think they are definitely better than the Blue Scribes, just because they are a cheap battle line in Arcanum. They are nice and fast. They do some damage. They're just like all around decent. I don't think they're amazing at the moment, but they're fairly good.
Sure. Okay, so let's move on to the 2 Gaunt Summoners. Do you want to cover their rules kind of real quickly? And
yeah. So, Gaunt Summoner, what do they bring? They have full access to the Mortal Lore, so that's very good. That's the lore you want full access to. They have once per game, if they don't die, which seems kind of weird, that whenever they target, they don't die, they can put someone in the Silver Tower, and you can do some funky stuff with that. But usually they're either dead or alive, so that doesn't really come up. And then you have the Silver Portal. So the Silver Portal, it's a delivery system for hammers, mainly. So either Flamers or maybe some Zangor, or I've also seen some people try with a Chosen, because it's only keyworded to Tzeentch, not Disciples of Tzeentch. So you can put in coalition units. My problem with that is that you need a very specific list for that to work. So either the Flamers is really the only thing that makes use of it. And he's just super expensive for what you get for that. Because if you're going to do some kind of delivery system, you kind of need the disc version, and the disc version is just extremely expensive. Now the foot version I like a lot more, because that's a way you can get one drop and get access to the full Mortal lore, while also getting access to Hoarfrost or Blizzard. Because they're not unique, you can get access to one of those and still get all the spells you want. So if you want to stay one drop, I've played him as a just get him with the rerolls, a +2 caster with full rerolls that has access to Hoarfrost. That's solid. A little bit expensive, but very good.
Now, while we're talking about it, technically you can take the Slaves to Darkness version. You won't get access to the spell lore. They're a little bit cheaper, and they would be coalition, so they could still take Merciless Blizzard or Hoarfrost. What do you think about that option? Do you think that's doable, or are you?
No, I don't think you ever do that. I think the reason why he's good is because he has access to the entire Mortal lore or Arcanite lore. Yeah. So he has access to Shield of Fate and Arcane Suggestion, and then on top of that you can get Hoarfrost or Blizzard, because he's not unique, so you can just do that.
Yeah.
And then you can give him the full rerolls from the Nine-Eyed Tome, the artifact. So I don't think you ever take the Slaves to Darkness version.
Okay. Yeah.
And I don't even think he works as coalition, because he has the Tzeentch keyword. He has to go as an ally. So he cannot take Hoarfrost or Blizzard.
Well, there was a FAQ about this where they said including Tzeentch. It's something we could talk about some other time.
Yeah, I don't think it's worth talking about. I don't think you ever do it. Just take the Tzeentch version.
Yeah. Okay. Where are we putting the two Tzeentch versions?
I think the foot one is definitely much better than the disc one. Like paying the extra points to just get shot off, it's not worth it. I think the foot version is somewhere in strong, and I think the disc version is somewhere in niche, because the foot version is just can work in any of the main strategies you would want, but the disc version, that means that you're doing some kind of flamer build, and that's just not as good. I think the foot version is somewhere near like the Lord of Change. He's better than the Fluxmaster, most definitely. He's somewhere there, and then I think so somewhere there. I think he's very good. I played him at the start of the GHB, and also Jeff went 5-0 with him in a specific list, and he's solid. He's just fragile, but he's pretty good. And then the disc version is somewhere in niche. He's just nowhere near as good. You pay way more and you get way less.
I mean, you do get +2 to the save characteristic, but then you don't get Lookout Sir, right? So that's a bad trade-off.
Yeah.
It's unfortunate that the discs are considered to be mounts when they barely are alive. You know, like in the lore, they're demons, but they're kind of like enslaved inside this object. Whereas in KO, you get to wear this like harness thing that doesn't count as a mount, but for all intents and purposes, it's not that much different than a vehicle like this thing is. So it's not like it's a separate creature. Yeah.
What is mounts? Like, I don't know why the Slan are not considered mounted, but the OBR dude on his throne is considered. What's mounts and what's not is weird always.
Yeah, agreed. Okay, are these placements okay where I put them?
Yeah, it seems about good. Yeah.
Okay. Moving on to the mortal casters, and now we've got another guy on disc, the Magister. What are we thinking about? You want to roll through what these guys have in common real quick, the two Magisters?
Yeah, so first let's talk about mortal casters, because the mortal caster ceiling or floor is always much higher than any of the demons, because you want access to the mortal lore, because you don't have anything that's really always going to be in your list that has access to the full mortal lore. And they have the best command rates in the book. Like both Arcane Suggestion, Arcane Sacrifice, and Cult Demagogue are amazing. This means I'm always looking to put at least one, maybe most of the time even two mortal casters in my list. Now just which are the best, and I think all 5 of them have valid options when you want to use them. Some are better than others. The Magister, what do they do? The Magister make an entire strategy work. with their interaction with the incarnate and that they can slay themselves means that they make the incarnate Guild of Summoners build work. This means that I think the Foot Magister is the best unit in the book.
Wow.
Because he makes that entire strategy work, and he's the cheapest way to do this, and he is a mortal caster, means that he works in both the Guild of Summoners incarnate builds, and he works in like a normal Host Arcanum just as a caster build. I think he is the best unit in the book because he makes an entire strategy work that is probably our best strategy at the moment. Their spell's pretty good. T3 Mortals, that's alright. Turning something into spawn, amazing. Second spell, I rarely use it. It's just sometimes you have to for the one fate point. You use some Destiny dice to just force it through, but you never really use it.
And by second spell, you mean the being able to get a second spell if you roll double.
His magic touch ability, that if his first spell is successful, he can cast a second spell.
Yeah.
You really use that to just blow himself up and make the incarnate go wild.
Sure.
But yeah, I think the disc one is somewhere in strong, probably around the Gun Summoner, and then the Foot version is just the best unit in the book.
Okay, interesting. Now, if we did put the incarnate in here, where would we put the incarnate?
I think the incarnate has to go in awesome as well. Okay, so the problem is because the incarnate works so well in Tzeentch, and because the incarnate is probably part of our best strategy at the moment, which is the Guild of Summoners incarnate build, because that is our best strategy, he becomes better, and I don't see the incarnate going away anytime soon. And just his interaction that he can blow himself up and because he makes that strategy work, he's the best unit in the book.
Yeah. Okay.
Because without him, that build doesn't work. Because you saw with the Rupture, everybody was using an incarnate because you could make your own incarnate go out. Now they removed that. We're still the only ones using it because we can make our incarnate go out.
Yeah.
So he on its own doesn't seem that amazing. But just everything on top of him, he can make the incarnate go out. He's a mortal caster. I've used him with both Arcane Sacrifice and Kill Demagogue. He's just great all around.
Okay. All right. So personally, I think I would put the Flux Master a little higher than the Magister on disc, but I don't know if you would agree with that. Let's see. Go for it.
So if we're looking at what does well in lists, it's the Magister on disc does better is seen in more lists that go 4-1-5-0. Just because he's a mortal caster. He's a fairly cheap mortal caster. So mortal casters are always going to have more value than any of the demon casters, because any of the demon casters, you don't take them for one of the lore spells.
Sure.
You have to take them for the specific spell. And I currently think that the Flux Master is not as great. His value has gone down because of the portal change, because of the cogs change. And we're starting to see more and more Magisters on disc just popping up in lists as a fast caster. Also, I think the Magister on disc is, I think, one of the only 2 units in the book that can do the charge 18-inch.
Sure, that's fair.
Battle tactic. So it's just opening up another battle tactic. You're rarely going to use it, but in the one game that you can, that's like getting an extra 2 points.
Yeah, it's like a suicide kamikaze run, right?
It's like turn 4, turn 5. I just need a tactic somewhere. This is something easy I can do. Okay. And only him and I think the Fate Master can do it natively without doing anything stupid.
And the Zangor Shaman can't do it?
No, because Zangor are not mortal. That battle tactic is listed as mortal, not Arcanite. Gotcha. So if you pull in Varangard, they can do it. But natively in the book, only him. And I think the Fortimis, the Warband dude, I think he has a 6-inch move instead of the 5-inch that the or the Magister himself can also do it, but then you have to do like 2 Destiny dice. But yeah, so him and the Fate Master are only real ones that can reliably do it.
Okay. Now, so the Gaunt, when you're talking about being a mortal caster, we've got the Gaunt Summoner sitting in here, but obviously he has access to the mortal lore, but isn't mortal. He used to be in the old book. He used to be both, which means he can't take the artifact and command trait situation. Is that is when you talk about something being important because it's a mortal caster, which one is more important, the spell lore or having access to the command trade artifact combo?
Both. They're equally as important. I think you take them in different situations. So I really like the mortal command traits, and I always want to have access to Shield of Fate and Arcane Suggestion.
Sure.
So I've run lists with both of them, with a Gun Summoner and a Magister, where you take the Magister with Cult Demagogue, and then you give him Blizzard, because auto-casting Blizzard is fun. And then you take a Gun Summoner with Horfrost, and then you have Horfrost for your Zangor. You have access to all the spells from the lore, from the mortal lore, and you can still be one drop. So that's I think they're both good. I think just because you're an Arcanite means that your value is always going up because you have access to the best command traits, the best spell lore in the book.
Okay, and where do we put them in order then? Which order do you want them in?
They're about even for me. I don't really mind either way. I think they both have interesting strategies. I think the Gun Summoner is a bit more fragile, but he opens up being one drop with all your toys.
Yeah.
I think they're fine.
Okay.
I think that, yeah.
Now, one thing that it's good to point out too that a lot of people overlook is if you're playing the Guild of Summoners build and you need to summon those birds, they have to be summoned around Arcanite heroes, which means the value, the stonks on these guys go up, including the Fate Master, who's your non-caster. But you really need to have a Curseling in there or Ogre Thaumaturge or someone as a summon point. And as soon as the opponent kills those, your whole thing about summoning birds is gone and you can't summon anything else either. So I think that raises the value of these guys as well. Unfortunately, again, the Gaunt Summoner doesn't count, which kind of sucks. But
Yeah.
Okay, so let's move on to the Curseling. I actually love this guy. There's a part of me that's tried to run two of him before because the Unbinding just keeps generating all these fate points, and they're such a cool unit. Obviously, the model looks great. I didn't hate the old model either. It's the only unit in our book that has a 3-up save, if I'm not mistaken.
Fate Master has one as well.
Oh, okay, right. The only caster then, let's put it that way.
Yeah.
And he's got reroll, unbinding, and dispelling rolls. If you put him in Host Arcanum, he's just an auto option for turning things off, and then getting extra points. Cult Demagogue, I think, works really well with him. And then also that one command trait, is it, that you can use from the GHB right now that like makes someone forget their spell? He's a pretty good option for that too if you want to go niche-y and go do that. Probably the best option in the game for doing that because he's just so good at unbinding. So I don't know. And then of course Glean Magic. Tell us what you're thinking about the Curseling. Like,
I love him.
Yeah.
I think if I can, I always try to get him in my list. Sometimes I just don't have the points, so I have to like downgrade him to a Magister. But I've never tried 2 because they're just very, very expensive.
Yeah, they've gone up,
like,
right? They used to be like
yeah,
180.
They're now 200 points, and they are very fragile against mortal wounds. So they're fairly good against anything else, but they're just extremely fragile against mortal wounds. And then having a 200-point hero doing that, I would rather get a Magister that's just cheaper, something you can throw away if you need to summon somewhere. But I really like 1. I think just the Glean Magic. There's some spells, it's a bit meta dependent, but there's just some spells that are amazing. Scragrot spell, Searing White Light from Teclis. There's a couple of like these War Scroll spells that are just amazing. That are I have killed Scragrot with his own War Scroll spell before. It was great. And then need the interaction with Glean Magic and Cult Demagogue. If you happen to get the double on the cast during your opponent's turn. 2 fate points, very good. I never fish for it, or never try specifically use any Destiny dice for it, but it's just solid all around. I really like him.
And then maybe if you have Spellcasting Savant, not that you ever would in Tzeentch with Master of Destiny, but if you had to, this would be the guy you would choose to keep alive probably, because he's the easiest to keep alive in Tzeentch. Not that that's really an option, but the fact that there's a guy that you can keep alive in the book is like normally we're pretty happy with a 4-up save, right? So going all the way to 3-up is not something you're going to complain about.
Yeah, he's very nice and tanky, and especially because of the 3-up base save. If there's something with like, if a rend 3 shot comes in, you can still use your Destiny Dive to save that. So that's like having a 3-up base save is like extremely good.
Yeah. So where are we putting him? I'm tempted to say bottom of awesome, but I don't know if that's too strong.
Yeah, sounds about right. Yeah, I like bottom of awesome. I think that's sounds about right. Yeah.
Okay. Now Thaumaturge, Ogroid Thaumaturge used to be kind of like a go-to piece in some of the older Tzeentch lists. I don't know if he's still doing that. Obviously, he's got his D6 Mortal Wound spell. His combat bonuses he's got aren't going to come up that often. You know, he has to be mad and then he's better in combat. But, like, otherwise, I mean, what are people taking him for? Just that he's a mortal wizard? I mean, he's relatively tanky with his wounds count and 4+ save, but is he as good as everyone used to think of him, or where are we putting him these days at 170 points?
No, so I really liked him when you could get Arcane Toma on him, so he would be able to cast either like Shield of Fate and his War Scroll spell, because like a D6 damage War Scroll spell is great, especially in combination with Arcane Sacrifice. He can stab himself and then deal some mortal wounds and heal back up. So that was always great. I think. You see him now, mainly that he is the most resilient to blowing himself up with Blizzard, because he has the most wounds and he can heal back up more easily. He's just the most resilient there. There's a meme build with Infusion Arcanum and then one of the artifacts where you can run around with him and then bonk people on the head. I don't think it's good, but that's a meme build that you can try. I think if it was a little bit cheaper, I would like him. You pay quite a lot for the melee stuff that's not like he does some damage, but he's still not amazing, and he's just still fairly fragile with a 4-up save. I think his main thing is just that with only one spell, and you want his spell and then one of the lore spells to go off, he is not a great spot at the moment as he used to be with Arcane Tome, where he could do both.
Yeah, one of the things we lost going from second to third was how, like, the fact that the birds, like Kairos lost his unique spell, so he just shares it with the regular birds. And there are a couple other places we lost some direct damage spells, and this guy's got one of the better ones, being a D6 and all. So I guess that's kind of one of his values, and it used to be that Kairos could know his spell, cast it, and then heal, that there was some utility there, but we just don't have that anymore. I've always kind of thought it was a miss that they didn't have this guy have any synergy with Zongor, considering he's kind of like a big Zongor, or that we didn't have a unit of like guys that are kind of like him. Obviously, we've got a certain number of Ogroid type things that are popping up in Slaves. The guy is just kind of like a lone wolf in that sense, and I really wish they would do something to make him kind of feel like he had a melee unit. Would be amazing if you had a Tzeentch melee unit that he could combo with, where they wanted to get into combat. I would think that would be kind of cool, but unfortunately, that's not where the guy's at. What are you thinking? Solid, bottom of solid, somewhere in the middle of solid? Where would
I think he's top. I think he's top of solid. I think because he's still a mortal or an Arcanite. So he is still like, and because he is just the most resilient to blowing himself up with Blizzard, that's also very good. I think he's top of solid. I think he's just decent. I would like him more if he would come down like 10, maybe 20 points. Then he would be real interesting. But now he's just a little bit too expensive.
Sure. Okay, and talking about a relatively cheap caster, especially one that's on a fast vehicle, method of transportation, we got the Zongor Shaman. He's our, if I'm not mistaken, cheapest wizard that's fast. Now, there was a moment where this guy was really overlapped well with the FOMO box combo that we had in Zongor Enlightened at the time. He could bring them back, and they counted. They had the right keywords. It was probably an oversight on GW's part, but I got to use him for about a month and a half where he was broken as hell bringing back Zongor Enlightened on disc. But obviously now he just brings back regular Zongors to a unit with his spell, and he's got a once per battle cast 1 extra spell and add 3 to the casting roll. So he's kind of got the a similar thing to what the heralds had on foot, or just whatever the changecaster variants. What are you thinking about the Zongor shaman? Do you ever use him? You're a Zongor guy. Do you feel like he synergizes enough with those guys to justify bringing him?
I don't think you're bringing him for the Zangor. I think you're bringing him because he is the cheapest caster in the book, and because he's fast. And his Sorcerer's Elixir is this season better than it was previous seasons because it's an extra spell. So the one turn where you need to get off, let's say, a Blizzard on top of some other spell, you can use this for your Blizzard. Is Watchful spell. I just wish it was less restrictive because it's it's D3 mortals. Okay, cool. You can, if you slay something, you can add a Zangor, but it's within 12 of the caster. So if you have a unit of Zangor out in front, you cannot, let's say, regenerate them. And also Zangor, they're either dead or alive because they're on a 5-up save. So I don't really care that I bring some of them back. His Watchful spell is not good enough, but he's cheap. He's fast. You see him sometimes pop up in the God of Summoners builds where they just want a cheap caster that so you can drop a chicken somewhere.
Yeah.
I think he is also somewhere in solid.
Okay.
He's alright. He's just because he's cheap and he's immortal means he always he has some value. But otherwise, yeah.
I didn't realize that he had accidentally become the cheapest caster. We used to have the Magister on foot that was way cheaper than him. I think he was like 110 for a while, and even the Changecaster was cheaper than him at some point back in a while ago, second edition book at least. I didn't realize that everyone, their points had gone up so high that he's our cheapest caster, which is kind of crazy.
It's the Magister on foot has gone up to like 140 and he's 130, so he is that's why he's sneaking into some lists at the moment. He's just the cheapest caster, and he's a nice fast summoning platform. So you're talking about getting the movement speed on the Changecasters variants. If you want that, just take him.
Yeah, I put him here between the Blue Scribes and Flamers. Do you want to move that around a bit?
No, I think he's better than the Blue Scribes at the moment, but that's about. I think he's like right on there with the Ogroids. They both see some play in some lists. They're not amazing. They're more like a second or third option. That fine.
Okay. And our last non-unique mortal guy is the Fate Master. He's our only non-caster hero in the book, if I'm not mistaken. Like you said, he's on a 3-up save. He's fast, 16-inch. He's got a 9-inch bubble of +1 to wound for all attacks for Disciples of Tzeentch units, Holy Then. And then he's got like a spell ignore that I always forget that he has. He's okay in combat, but the main reason you're taking him is for the +1 to wound. I guess there's really only two builds that you're going to really argue for this guy in. Would be Eternal Conflag, as we've already mentioned, because it applies to shooting attacks as well. And then maybe a Zongor heavy melee build or something to keep up with some Enlighten on Disc. Thing is, they've already got +1 to wound if they go second on the battle round, so I don't know how useful that is. I guess guaranteeing that it's always there, so that even if you don't go second, is nice. What do you think about this guy? You played Zongor a lot. Do you feel like he's worth taking if you're taking a melee build?
No, the problem is like his aura is just so small that to be able to get that in melee means that he has to go real close, and then he's just gonna die on your opponent's next turn. For 160 points, I would rather just take 10 extra Zangor and just have another like fast missile you can send somewhere. I like the +1 to wound. It's much better in shooting lists because then you don't have to put him in danger. If you're taking Flamers, just take him, put an Arcane Tome on him, and then be good. But otherwise, I don't think he sees plays. I think he's very much niche with the Exalted Flamers right next to them.
Sure. Yeah, that's funny because he's the only non-wizard, and then you're already talking about making him a wizard again. So, okay, so next to the Flamers. I think that's fair. Yeah, kind of what we're seeing in this niche list here, the row, is that everything basically is Eternal Conflag oriented. Including even the Changecaster, which getting that extra -1 to save. So that's unfortunate as one of my babies, but it is what it is. All right, let's move on to the the two Underworld's Warband type guys. I threw in the new one, Ephelim's Pandemonium here, which I've looked up the rules, but I don't have any practical sense for these. I'm not a big Underworld's Warband kind of guy. But what are we thinking about Vortimus the All-Seeing? He's basically just the same thing as a Magister on foot. Obviously, he can't take artifacts or command traits. He's stuck in Cult of the Transient Form, which is weird. He what am I trying to say? Can't take Merciless Blizzard or anything like that. His one spell gives him an extra command point, which is that he has to issue. Okay, it's kind of silly. Do you have any thoughts about Vortimus himself? I've split them up into two different things here: the wizard part of each one of these units, and then their associated unit. What do you think of Vortimus? Is this an avoid?
Yeah, probably. So, what you're paying 20 points more than a normal Magister. He's stuck in the worst subfaction. His War Scroll spells is much worse than the other stuff. He's unique, so he cannot take the thing. So you're paying 20 points for an extra screen. That is not doing really anything except for maybe screening out some kind of deep strike somewhere. I think he's just an avoid. I think use his model as a Magister on foot. I love his model way more than the normal dude, but just avoid him. I have mine. He's primed. I haven't ever needed to paint him because he's just like, no. Just take a normal Magister on foot. Just you're paying 20 points less and you're getting more.
Yeah, and then speaking of his unit here, they're even worse. I would say they're worse than, if you want to separate them out, worse than what the Changeling is doing. Because at least the Changeling is a 2-caster that could sit behind your lines. He's the cheapest 2-caster we have, if I'm not mistaken. The thing of the Eyes of the Nine is they don't even offer a bodyguard rule. They have a 6+ ward for 2 of the models. But and then they've got a blue that splits. But why are you really taking them? They don't have any synergy with Vortimus himself. Personally, I think they might be actually worse than him. But of course, when you purchase the Magister, then you're getting some value there. So they're 20 points worth of kind of filler. Do you have
I think that they're just it's just a cheap screen. They're just like a road bump somewhere. I think they're definitely better than the Changeling because you're getting them with Vortimus. So you're paying, let's say, 30 or 40 points for a screen. That's just good, solid value. But because Vortimus is just not good, you're not taking them. And yeah, as you said, 6 of War doesn't do anything. They don't bodyguard him. They're just bad. Just don't take them.
All right, so talking about Ephelim, the new guy. I mean, I'm having to look back over his War Scroll a bit here, so he can kind of bring guys back to his unit, and he can also sacrifice them to add 2 to casting rolls. So that's kind of something. And then they can also teleport. And what is it that does he bring them to him, or they teleport together? How does it work? Do you know?
No. So his teleport works is he's basically transporting people from objectives to objective. So you pick a unit that is within 6 of an objective, and then you can teleport them somewhere else, and they have to end within 6 of an objective. So you can do some funky stuff with this because it has to end within 6, not wholly within 6. You can leave one model towing on one objective and then string stuff out all the way. So it's kind of like a different type of bridge play. He can stab some of his own units and then get +2 to cast. So that's pretty good. Just getting native +2 with the chicken aura being on +3. That's pretty solid. He's also stuck in transient form, so he's also stuck in the worst subfaction. Because he's a demon, he doesn't get access to any of the good stuff that you want from him, and he's just expensive. He's for 190. You get a 1-caster that can't take any of the good spells. If you want to do some kind of teleport play, just take a bridge. I don't he's definitely better than stuff in a void because out of phase movement is amazing and teleports are always good. It's just that I don't see him really working to any kind of good effectiveness. And because if you want to return some stuff, you have to give up your cost, so that's always bad. Yeah, I don't know. I just don't really think he's that amazing. I think he's like bottom of niche because out of phase teleport's always good, but yeah, no, I just don't see him working.
Okay. Yeah, and so the teleporting thing that he does, they don't have to be cast around him. It's just from an objective to an objective. So they do have to be within a certain range of him, 18 inches. But they don't.
Yeah, but
When they get teleported, they just go to anywhere on the battlefield. They don't have to be near him. Some of those are units. I forget who does that. I guess there's an Idoneth unit that does this. That has kind of like a teleport, brings the unit with him and all that. But I was getting him confused with that. So. So yeah, I could see that having more utility. Do you put him in niche, you think?
Yeah, he's definitely not a void territory. He's definitely better. Just because teleports are always good. I think he's just too expensive for what he does at the moment.
Yeah.
And he has he's stuck in the worst subfaction. He is a demon, so he doesn't get any of the good spells. He's unique, so he doesn't get. It's just multiple things working against him. But compared to, let's say, the changeling, he does something that's interesting. He does something that you can use in a strategy.
Okay.
So he's always going to be better than that.
So where are we putting him on our niche list here?
Somewhere near the gun summoner, probably. He is like, I don't know. I haven't played with him enough. I've played with him once. He did something, but I think he's just too expensive for what he does. Yeah. And in the current build, there's no if Host Duplicitous was doing better, you could see it in that play, and that okay, he's part of that strategy. But just Host Duplicitous isn't doing well because things are just not that tanky enough. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I just think he's just not good enough in the current builds that would want him. And if he was locked to Host Duplicitous, that might be more interesting, but he's locked to Transient Form. So yeah, I think he's somewhere in niche.
And his unit has a -1 to hit if they're near him. And of course, they can be sacrificed, but there's no bodyguard rule or anything like that, and they're not really putting any output out. If we were to use them as separate from him, do you want to put them next to him, or do you want to put them further down?
No, I think because they just come in pairs, like you always take them if you take Evelyn. I think they're part of the same pair.
Okay.
That they're, and it's just 4 extra dudes that you sacrifice. Okay, sure, and you can transform one into a spawn with the sigil. Maybe I don't know. Right. It's yeah, I don't really have a big opinion about them. They're there. They give him plus to the best.
I do love their models though. I would totally be open to a whole new unit that looked like that. Just these crazy horrors.
And I actually hate their models.
Oh, really?
I
okay.
Like it so
okay. Right.
Yeah, I'm not into that kind of Tzeentch stuff. No, that's not my thing.
All right. So let's move on to your territory here, the Zongor land. We've got Zongor Skyfires listed first here. I have a feeling you're going to, like me, put these guys pretty low. Especially for their points, but maybe you'll surprise me. What do you think about Skyfires?
They're void, but that's not their fault. It's the fault of the game. The land changed under them, and their points haven't been updated. So what did they do? What was their job? Their job was to snipe out support heroes, where they ignored the lookout, sir. You cannot get any save bonuses. So if there's just a wizard on a 5-up save, he cannot find a star, he cannot all out defense, and then they're just going to try and snipe him out. The problem is with the change of lookout, sir. They cannot target them anymore. So they lost their job. But they're still more expensive than Enlightened. Like I don't know what's going on here. Like they just don't work.
Yeah.
So they are just an avoid unit. Just don't bring them. Like their shooting output is not good enough to take down any big things. Their job is just it's so sad. Like they used to be like a pretty good unit, but then the rules changed and now they're just not usable anymore. And they haven't dropped their points. Like that's the real big thing. Why, if you're gonna change the core rules, fine, drop their points.
Yeah, that's fair. I'm checking to see what they are in Beasts of Chaos because they exist there as well. Do you know off the top of your head Skyfires? Let's see. 210, so even more expensive.
Yeah.
But shooting doesn't get the extra rend, right? In Beast of Chaos, the Hearthstone rend. So I don't know why what the benefit there is. So, yeah, weird.
Yeah, no, I don't know. I think they're just...
Yeah, there was a long time ago when they were considered like the best unit in the book. And I think it was like at the end of first edition or something like that. Skyfires were just a terror, or before, maybe in second edition, before the second edition book came out, but then they changed the rules on them, and I don't think they've really been that good ever since. So I do see what you mean about ignoring the to hit rolls, modifiers to hit and wound rolls, and then ignoring save rolls. There is something there for sure, and especially in a save stacking meta. But like you said, with all out Sir being what it is, I mean, sorry, look out, Sir. Yeah.
And like the idea was that you had like, okay, you could snipe some unit and or snipe a hero, but now you just cannot target them anymore. And at first I was like, okay, that's just a 6-month season rule. That's fine. Some units are going to suffer from that. But now that they changed the core rules, they have to rethink about what this unit is going to do, because their current role just doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah, that's fair. So let's go from one of the worst units to one of the best units. Zongor Enlighten on Disc. It's going to come to no one's surprise that this unit is strong, even in a unit of 3, just having one of these in your army. I'm tempted to say it belongs in Awesome as almost an auto take. Why don't you break them down and let's see if we are on the same page with these guys.
Yeah, so what do? They don't seem that amazing if you first look at them, but they're sneaky, extremely good, especially for what Tzeentch does. So their 16-inch move, 4-up save, 4 wounds, so that's already pretty good. And they are a melee hammer. Like, their spears are pretty good. Their big problem, as always, they hit on 4s, and they don't have that much wound. But what do we have currently in the season that can help them? Hoarfrost. They're probably one of the best Hoarfrost targets in the game. Because the spears, you either get to hit on 2s, which is very good, or you go to rend 3. They stop commands while they're within 3, only in the combat phase, so it's not as good as, let's say, Morka's Archai, who just stop commands all the time, but it's still pretty good. Stopping all-out defense means you're effectively at extra rend. And then +1 to wound, pretty solid. It's not something I'm banking on, but just getting +1 to wound when you're going second, pretty good. The reason why I like them a lot is because they give Tzeentch another dimension on their damage. They're the only unit in the game where you can just say, you're 28 inches away, I can get to you. Because 16-inch move plus 12-inch from your Destiny die, you can just force 28-inch charges, or 28-inch move with a charge anywhere on the board. They are not as a big damage. If you math it out, they don't do that much damage, but they're not like a real hammer. They're more scalpel. You can use them to take out an enemy unit, Hoarfrost them up, Shield of Fate them, Mystic Shield them. They're gonna kill something, and they're gonna be relatively hard to deal with on the crackback. And because they are not bound to your 18-inch casting bubble, I really, really like them at the moment. I think they belong in Awesome. I don't think they're auto-include because you have the entire in a Guild of Summoners strategy. I don't think they fit, but I think they're amazing at the moment. They are the highlight of the season at the moment for me playing Tzeentch.
Sure. Yeah. I feel like the reason I was leaning towards an auto-include, maybe not in a specific list like that, but is because they're one of the only 16-inch move units you can take in this army where you feel like they can go off and do their own thing and they're going to be totally fine. Whereas Screamers are going to get shot down or going to get taken down pretty quickly and aren't going to do that much in damage. You say they're not that hammery, but I've definitely used them in a way that's removed plenty of people, especially considering they can't use all at defense. Obviously they are good. I think you're probably comparing them to some stronger hammers in the game, but for Tzeentch, it's an amazing hammer.
Yeah.
And the speed, it's just hard to argue with, like you said, getting across the board. Where are we putting these on Awesome? I put them in the middle there. Where do you want to put them?
Yeah, sounds about right. Yeah, just somewhere there. Yeah, I think they're. I might drop them below Kairos because they don't work in. They're not part of the Guild of Summoner strategy, and so they're. And Kairos might be. I think they're somewhere there. I think they are extremely good. I really like them. I think they're somewhere there, but they're roughly right there with Kairos. They're definitely worse than the blue summons because that's just real good. But yeah, somewhere there.
Okay, and so for half the price, we're getting the same number of guys, just not on a disc. So they're not getting the disc. I'm talking about the guys on foot now. 1 less wound characteristic, same save. 10-inch less movement. They're moving 6. Same abilities, and obviously doing the same kind of output if you Hoarfrost them. The reason I actually have used 6 of these guys was, like I was mentioning, as like a kind of fighty screen to put them in front of my flamers and to turn off command abilities. And overall, they absorb more wounds per point because you're getting 6 of them for the same price as 3 of the discs. If you're not planning on being mobile with the discs, the guys on foot, if they're just acting as something to protect your dudes, are pretty decent, especially if you give them a Mystic Shield or give them Shield of Fate or whatever as your frontline defenders. That said, I'm also gonna totally accept that they could be a niche, but for their points, they're actually really punchy. What do you think, as someone who's played big blocks of like regular Zongors, was there ever a place, because obviously you were okay with the slower movement of 6 inches, was there ever a place for you to use regular Enlightened on foot?
So I think that the Foot Enlightened are a defensive unit and the Disc Enlightened are an offensive unit. And they are noticeably a bit slower than the normal Zangor host because they don't have run and charge.
Sure.
And that's actually really big. So I think that 6 work. I think 3 work. Just as a 90 point, you put them behind pinks and just say, okay, you want to come into my pinks? I'm going to stop your commands and I'm going to fight over the top. I think they're definitely better than niche. I think they're somewhere in solid. I think they are one of the more wounds efficient units in the book because for 180 points you get 18 wounds on a 4-up save. It's just that my problem with them is that they don't have a delivery method. Sure. And that's what I really like about the discs. They're much more expensive. They don't do that much more damage, but you have an amazing delivery method. So yeah, I think they're a defensive piece. I think they're fine. I think they're just fine to take. We've seen them do well on some lists. I personally am not a huge fan of them because I like the normal Zangor more, but I think they're somewhere in solid. I think they're somewhere around the Zangor Shaman level. They're in 3s and 6 work. They're just fine.
Okay, cool. That might be the biggest surprise of the day, actually, for me. Hearing, I didn't know, we didn't talk about this beforehand. I thought I was the only one that stanned these guys at all. But nice to hear that my Zongor buddy is like Zongor as well. All right, all kinds of Zongor. How about the regular Zongors? You're kind of a champion of regular Zongors. And you were using the paired blades all the time, every day, all day, right? Did you have to convert them after they got better from being, because I think a mixed weapons option used to be better, and then the pairs just got significantly better with the 3rd edition book. Did you have any that you had to convert, or what'd you do about that?
No, I have 50 of them, so I have like and I didn't really play that much before the new book. I mainly like really started playing after the new book, so I just have lots of them. Like I have everything that I need. I converted some of the normal ones just into my Foot Enlightened with the great weapons. But yeah, it's paired blades all day, every day. Mathematically, if you do the thing, it's only ever better to put the great blade on the champion. But now with the season, it might not be even that much better. It's only better by like 0.2 damage output against the 4-up save. But the reasons why I never take that is because then you're going to have to roll a different unit, like a different profile. So instead of just rolling everything at once, you're going to have to split it out. It takes more time.
Sure.
With Hoarfrost, if you have everything has paired blades, you can just Hoarfrost them and get them to like Ren 2 or even like Ren 1 and just get them just all in the same profile. The reason why I really like them is because they give you different damage output or a different way you do your damage than what Tzeentch normally has. Because Tzeentch has lots of high quality but low quantity damage in all their mortal wounds. With the Zangor, if you come in on the charge, you come in with 54 attacks. Like, it's just so many attacks. And with everything has the paired blades, that means that you're getting 33 attacks on 3s and 3s, no round 1 damage. That's amazing against like hordes and clearing 40 stab-ass, clearing zombies, clearing skeletons, clearing that kind of stuff. It's real good against that. Because they have run and charge. You can actually, they're fairly mobile, or way more mobile than you think, because you can move 6, run 6, charge 12, and you can always just guarantee that. So they're more of like a super fast missile that you can send out somewhere. Then on top of that, they have the ornate totems. So the ornate totems are sneaky good. You have to a little bit play around it, but because it happens at the start of your hero phase, means that you can roll that first before your opponent gets to do a rally or gets to do a heroic action healing. Say if they have like a hero left at 1 wound, you can just snipe him out before they get to do anything back to it. So it's the totems are very solid as well. They're just a cheap, all-round solid. I really like them. The only big downside is the 1-inch range, which means that to get them all in, you're gonna have to make some triangles. It can easily work, but if they ever had 2-inch range, or if maybe the Great Blades had 2-inch, then you might pick the Great Blades. It's kind of weird why they don't have it, but if they got 2-inch range, then you might also start running them in 20s. I never run them in 20s because you're just not kind of getting them all in. But 10 of them for 180 points, I really like them.
Yeah, I don't know if I've ever actually used them in game, but I've played against you enough with them to see what they can do. I think we played a tournament game at one point. I might have been playing Lumineth at that point when this was in Haarlem. When you made some kind of Hail Mary charge that you really needed to hit with those guys, and you did, and that was game over. They can do some work, and they are fast. So
it's just like a different damage profile than you normally have in Tzeentch, and I really like running at least 1 unit. I used to run 2. Now I just don't really have the points, and especially now that I also like to run the discs. But I think they're still very good as 1. You see them quite often in the Good of Summoners builds as just a one-off. Just don't take the Great Blades. Never, ever look at the shields. It's just not worth it. Just take 10 of them with the great weapons. They're gonna die if something real gets into them, but you can just send them out as a missile somewhere, deal with something, get an objective, and they're gonna have to answer it. So I think they're very good. I think they are probably top of straw. Are they better than pinks? I don't know. I personally, I would. That's my bias coming through. I think they're. But I think realistically they're just under the pinks.
Yeah, see, this is what I meant about the kind of like not just bias, but what we kind of want the world to be. That pinks get pulled down a little bit because they're kind of not that fun to play with, and then these guys we really want them to shine. But I'm going to trust you on this and leave them right there. And I think you just said take 10 with Great Blades, but you meant take 10 with Pair of Blades, right?
Oh, just ignore the Great Blades, ignore the shield. Just take 10 with the Pair of Blades and just roll. Just hand your opponent like, here, make 25 saves. Good luck.
Awesome. Okay, so moving on to the Kyrics. I always feel weird that the book lays things out this way because I feel like battle line options are such a core part of list building that you'd want to have these a little bit earlier in the list. But here we are talking about them kind of at the end. Kyrics, I feel like Tzeentch is one of these armies that has one of the least flexible battle line situations of all the books out there because your only real options are kind of expensive. Like pinks are extremely expensive, $250 for 10. Of course, that's 50 wounds worth. And then you've got the Zongors we were just talking about at 180 points for 10. Also pretty expensive for just knocking out a battle line unit. And then you got Kyrics at what, 120 still now? But they're pretty glass cannony like everything in Tzeentch. I mean, they've got a ward save, but you could take Screamers, but you got to be in a certain sub-faction. You could take the Chariots, but you got to have the guy that we already said is not worth taking, the Fate Skimmer, as your general. So how do you feel about dealing with battle line in this army? Do you feel like it's something that kind of hampers you a bit when you're list building, or do you feel like it's not really that much of an issue?
So for me, it's not usually an issue because I really like Zangor, so I always have a unit of Zangor. I think in the current season you want at least 1 unit of Carricks. And then it's like a third unit. You either have an Incarnate and then you're just running double Carricks, or you're running you're running a unit of Pinks. So I never really have that much of a problem. But everything is expensive in this army. It's just you're getting so much value throughout the game, extra on top of your army, that your list is always going to be expensive.
Yeah. Oh, and I forgot flamers too, but obviously that's not really a viable list right now. What about if you could have another, like a Zongor elite unit get turned on with a sub faction like Cult of the Transient Form or something, or perhaps having the Thaumaturge or Shaman as your general? Do you think that would be too much, or do you think that would also be totally balanced?
I don't know. I think it would be fine. I think just our Tzeentch is an army that's built around its casters and its wizards and its heroes. So having not as flexible battle line options I think is fine, because we want all the cool stuff to be in our heroes and to be all the magic stuff we want to do. I would love for them to have an actual like Zangor subfaction where they would become good and not the meme that is Transient Form. But I think the battle line options are fine. I would like if we had like a like some kind of curseling a mutated unit, like a if you know from Total War Warhammer, there's Doom Knights, which are like Tzeentch marked Chaos Warriors that ride discs. I would love for that to come into this, and then maybe have like the Fate Master turn them battle line. And but I think I think it's fine. I think especially now that we have the Jade Obelisks, we have an extra battle line unit that's always on battle line. That's good. I don't think they're that amazing, but we'll get to that in a moment.
Sure. Okay. So Kyrics, obviously they're casters as long as they've got 9 or more models, which is easy to lose. But of course that means they're giving you an unbind as well. They can only cast their own spell, but I think, is that true? Yeah, they only, yeah. And then they obviously it can stack. I've never tried it myself, but you can have multiple units of Kyric stack the Rend onto one big block of 30 or something to get it up to something crazy. And you know, the shooting profile is okay. I mean, it's nothing worth, you know, writing home about, but it can do something especially if you get that Rend on there. Then they've got +1 to cast and unbind, not dispel, with their scroll. They've got the bird that I always forget about, the Vulchark, that on a 4+ can do mortal wound to a wizard, enemy wizard that successfully casts a spell within 18 inches. You know, they're your cheapest battle line unit, and the fact that they can generate fate points by casting is nothing to sneeze at. What are your thoughts on Kyrics?
Yeah, I think you hit on most of the stuff. I think the fact that I have an unbind is sneaky really good this GHB, because lots of armies, their turn 1 battle tactic is going to be magical dominance. Having something you can deploy on the line, I think there's only 2 or 3 of the battle plans where you can realistically deploy always out of unbind range. But there's a couple that if you deploy on the line, the enemy, they cannot get out of 30 inch. So having at least one of the units that you can deploy on the line, and it's totally fine if you lose some of them, but you force them to not be able to take turn 1 magical dominance. So I think that's really good. Just having an extra fate point, fine. That's solid. Their spell is okay. You cast it and that's about it. And the shooting meme, it's sadly just not good enough because they are too expensive. You saw it a little bit at the start of the book when they were cheaper, but yeah, no, I don't think that's really worth it. But I think they're still almost an auto-include. I think they're they are more an auto-include than Enlightened Discs, because in a Incarnate build you take 2 or 3 of them. I think you always take one in Host Arcanum build. I think they're 100% an awesome. I think they're too expensive for what they do, but I think they are very necessary. And because of the turn 1 tactic situation, this GHB, they just shut up even more.
Yeah, and it's again going back to the battle line. If they weren't battle line, I don't know if they would be quite as high up on the list.
No way.
But yeah, just because that's their cheapest option. Speaking of Jade Obelisk, which is, I just reread the rules, 130 points for 10, 4-up unrendable save, unimprovable save, right? So it's like ethereal. And then they bring back some models, so that's interesting, at each combat phase, not just yours. And then they can do Smash to Rubble, which is super weird. But otherwise, they're just kind of like a battle line unit with a decent like actually really good save for Tzeentch. A 4-up unmodifiable save is something. Do you have any of these guys?
No. Okay. The problem is until the last battle scroll, they were just more like a double unit was just more expensive than pinks. So you would never take them because just take the pinks. They have multiple issues, I think. So having a 4-up ethereal, that's solid, but it's also only a 4-up ethereal. Like if the 4-ups are not that amazing. You're just like, I've played a bunch of Bellicor, you're just gonna fill a bunch of 4-ups, you're gonna be set. They're only 1 wound each, so you're paying. I always compare them a unit of 20 versus a unit of pinks, because that's now both 260 points. They're the same idea. They are an anvil that you put somewhere, and something is hard to get through. Put the Shield of Fate on them. All right. My problem with them is that they're just not as well-rounded as pinks, because pinks are just good against anything. High damage, low damage, high attacks, low attacks. Pinks are just, they're always going to tank, -1 to hit, Shield of Fate, just solid. These dudes, like 20 Zangor, just blow, like, or Zangor blow through these dudes. Mortal Wound blow through these dudes. Anything that turns off Inspiring Presence, you're just going to lose the entire unit. There's no incentive to reinforce them because you don't get 2 of the dudes back if you had 2 of the Obelisk Bearers. Like with Splintered Fang from Slaves, you do. You get 1 per Snake Charmer, so you would get 2 back. So that's also a negative against them. They're quite a large footprint, so it's rougher to move about them. That's why, like, pinks with the splitting, you can more easily maneuver them, and it's I like that better. Their bows, just don't take them. It's just not worth it. It's just a shot at force. Just don't do it. I don't know. If you take them, you kind of also want to take a Life Swarm, just to return some models, because returning these is actually they're actually quite valuable, but you don't really have points or space for Life Swarm. Smash Rubble is not gonna come up like maybe once every 25 games. They just don't cut it. Like with that they're same price as pinks, you might take them, but I still don't think you take them.
Yeah, it's good that you said it. I had forgotten when I said earlier the pinks were 250. I'd forgotten they'd gone up 10 points. So good that you reminded me of that. Where would you put these guys on the list?
I think with the current price, they are bottom of solid, maybe top of niche. I think before the last price cut and the increase for pinks, I think they were very much in the niche category. I think you can make them work. They're either bottom of solid or top of niche. I think they're just like, the reason why you don't see them is everybody has horrors, because horrors have been around for way longer, and you kind of need some horrors for summoning. So, and having to spend another, like, I don't know, buying 2 of these boxes is expensive because they're Warcry stuff, so it's going to be like 90 euros. I always just say, just take unit of pinks, and you're going to need pinks to take them. Don't invest in these.
Yeah, I'm just looking at that. You're right about the weapons options. It's weird that a Warcry box has a choice because usually they're kind of fixed. But you can just go the melee option. The melee option's not bad because it's 2 attacks, 4s, 3s, -1/1. It's at least rend. But the shooting attack's kind of pointless. They're worse than the shooting attacks of the Kyrex. So
just don't take the bows. Don't even worry about it.
Yeah. Okay, so we've only got a few things left. We've got the Chaos Spawn plus the 3 endless spells in the book itself. We agreed to put the Chaos Spawn kind of here at the end, even though they come earlier in the book, because we both think of them as more of a battle trait that just happens to be something you can pay points for. So, because there's the whole transformed into a spawn, or whatever the rule's called. Now, what's interesting to mention is we're going to actually follow that up by talking about the Burning Sigil, which works differently. Correct me if I'm wrong. It doesn't follow the same rules as the transformed into spawn rule or whatever. Can you just explain the whole spawn situation in the book, just in general? Obviously, we got the Magister. We've got the Magister blowing himself up, and then also what the Magister spell does. Plus, we got the Burning Sigil, and then just explain how the spawn situation works in general in the book, and then maybe what you think about the unit as compared to like the spawn that's in the Slaves to Darkness book.
Yeah. So indeed, as you said, the sigil doesn't work with the battle trait, and that is super annoying, and I hate it so much. But currently it doesn't. So, but the entire transforming into spawn, it's an amazing rule. You can do so much cool stuff with this. You can stop Unleash Hell. You can stop charges with the sigil. So the way that the battle trait works, it's if you do some mortal wounds, you transform something into a spawn, and then your opponent picks a model. Okay, this is the thing I'm removing, and then you have to set up a spawn within an inch of that. Fine. With transforming into spawn, they're also not slain. So if there are some triggers on slain, that doesn't work. So I think it's like one of the return to life things. It triggers on being slain. No, you're not slain. Doesn't matter. The sigil works differently because it's within 3 of the unit. So if on one side you put a sigil, you can 15 inches further on the other side of the unit, if they have like a long line, you can put a spawn. And because it's within 3 inches, you can pull way more stuff into combat. I think you never take spawn in your list, but I think there's really, really good. They don't do a lot. They heal sometimes, which is fine. Sometimes it's a mortal wounds, but it's more locking people up in combat and just being annoying, stopping charges. That's the real main thing that you use them for.
How many do you think a normal player should have? Like, I think I've got 4 to 6, but that's just because I had a game that went 7 on one of them. How many do you own?
So I would suggest never buying the spawn box. I think there's a 40k kit, the Accursed Cultists. They are the same price. You get 3 dudes that look exactly like someone being transformed to spawn. You've probably seen my spawn. They're amazing, like amazing models. Just buy that. You get 1 extra spawn, and you get some 5 little dudes that you can use from conversions. I think you need 3. 3 spawn is like that's a solid start. I think I have 6, but yeah, just buy the Cursed Cultist kit. It saves you money. It's a much better kit. Don't waste your money on spawn.
Yeah, and one of the things that's different about the Tzeentch version of the Chaos Spawn, which used to be the same as the Slaves to Darkness one, is that it heals when any wizard casts a spell within 9 inches of it that's successfully cast, not unbound. Heals all of its wounds back, which can actually make a difference. I've seen it keep the guy alive and long enough to keep them whatever unit tied up. And then obviously if the unmodified hit roll is a 6, it does some mortal wounds. So with 2d6 attacks, it's a decent unit for what it is. How many points does it cost? By the way, I forgot.
Yeah, 80.
80. Yeah. So yeah.
Yes.
And that's for 2 or just 1?
Just 1.
Oh yeah, that's not worth it.
No, so you never pay points for it, yeah. But you always want some. Like you have to have some, but you never pay points for them. It's always about the sigil. I think sigil is like it's solid. It's a little bit meta dependent, but yeah, I think having 2 to 4, that's a good range. So that's why I like the Accursed Cultist. You get 3 different ones. Just get that box and then you're going to be good.
Okay, so speaking of it, not as something you buy with points, but as something that you have in your army, you have access to. Where are we putting these guys?
I think as a war scroll, they're somewhere in niche, but I think the tricks you can do with the transforming into spawn. So let's just use the best case scenario with all the tricks you can do. I think they're somewhere in strong. I think look like stopping Unleash Hell, stopping charges. There's just so much cool stuff you can do with the entire transforming into spawn mechanic. It's amazing. I think they're probably somewhere like near the Fluxmaster or near Magister, somewhere there.
Okay.
It's a little bit meta dependent, and because the sigil really only works against like smaller dudes, but it has won me multiple games just being able to use the sigil to transform a clan rat to lock up 6 Storm Fiends so that I can charge in without getting unleashed. Stopping 15 Sensor Bearers from charging me because I transformed 1 into a spawn. It's very good. You can do some cool tricks with it.
Okay, so let's separate it from the sigil because we're about to do the sigil. So if the sigil trick isn't included in this, so it's just the spawn as a unit that exists once it happens, but not necessarily because of the sigil. Are we still putting it here?
No, then it's like niche. It's there. It's locking people up. It's like bottom of solid, top of niche. I don't really care. Like it's not a great war scroll, but it doesn't have to be a great war scroll to be very useful.
Yeah.
So that's the entire thing. Like it's there, it does some stuff. It's just annoying, and you don't have to pay points for it, so that's why it's good.
So then let's say we put the sigil kind of where you were talking about before. I feel like it can change the whole complexion of a game if you've got the sigil out in the middle of the field. In that first game you and I played against each other, we both had sigils up, and I think each of our sigils did more damage to ourselves than it did to the other player, or something like that. That was a chaotic game. And also, it's worth pointing out that one of the battle traits is we get to summon one of these endless spells for free at the beginning of the game, which is obviously strong. Where do you put the sigil? Would you say that it should belong here, or would you move it around a bit, given that what it does?
Yeah, so the sigil, it used to be my go-to, but now it both went up and the meta has shifted, especially with the rise of Khorne. Like, this is just a giant liability against Khorne.
Sure.
Because Khorne will park the entire army in it and just farm blood tithe.
Yeah.
But I think it might. I think so. It's a bit meta dependent, but I think it's on the rise again, with Skaven being on the rise, with cities. Like, this is going to be amazing against cities. Like, just stopping the Fusiliers from shooting you into the Dark Elf stuff, into steam tanks. It's just like, that's going to be amazing into there. So I think it's with the nerf of, or maybe mainly the OBR nerfs, and some of the Khorne just not being as strong. I think it's somewhere there. Yeah, I think it's very good.
Okay, Tome of Eyes. This is probably the other one that you're thinking is pretty good. Walk us through how I'm sure you've used this before, right? Tome of Eyes?
Yeah.
Yeah, talk us through it, because it gives you a spell, but it also follows your guy around and giving some rerolls. Walk us through how one best uses this.
Yeah, so this is the cheapest one. So I think you always want at least one of the bookend spells, because it's free. It's a free fate point turn 1. It can help you over, get over that point of like 9 or 10, depending on what you want turn 1. So I think you always want one. This is cheapest one. I think it's also better this season because Chronomatic Cogs doesn't do this anymore. So this gives you full casting rerolls on something. It's not unbinding rerolls. It's only casting, which is kind of annoying. But so if you have like this, and you can put this next to Kairos, or you can let Kairos summon this, then he's suddenly a 3-caster with all the rerolls. So that's very good. It's just the cheapest one. It's 40 points. If you don't have points for Sigil, or if Sigil in your local meta isn't really working, if there's lots of giants or something else, just take this, put it on Kairos, or put it on like next to the bird. You're gonna be happy.
Right. Where are we putting it?
His spell is just don't ever cast it. Like, just cast Inject Mutation. It's always gonna be D3. I think this is somewhere in Solid. It doesn't have as high highs as Sigil does. But it's also never liability, like Sigil can be. I think it's somewhere in Solid. I think it's like somewhere near Blue Scribes. I've used it. I've liked it. It's cheap. Fine.
Okay. Sure. Having it in your list is obviously, having access to it is obviously good. Yeah. All right. And then the Simulacrum. I've never seen anyone use this thing, actually. So I'm having to remind myself. That's why, because it has to target the closest enemy unit, or closest unit, including yours, to do mortal wounds. And Tzeentch units are not protected from it. Is there any real reason anyone would use this thing?
It's like all right mortal wounds. It's more reliable than Sigil, but it doesn't have nowhere near as big of an upside as Sigil. I've seen some people use it and like it. I personally don't like it, especially with the new endless spells like Pendulum being much better this season. Yeah. With other just like more general use like Geminids. I find myself having one endless spell spot free because I always want Portal, and I kind of take either Sigil or Tome of Ice over this. I don't think it's in a void because no, it's like it does something. It's nowhere near as bad. Like Skyfires, they just don't do anything. Vortemis doesn't do anything. This thing, it does some mortal wounds. It's nowhere near a void. I think it's like bottom of niche. Because a void, I would actively never take this, but this, it's fine. If you want to use it, you can use it. I don't think it's amazing, but at least does some mortal wounds. and because it's the closest unit within 6, you can kind of avoid it with your own stuff. I don't think it's bad. I just don't think it's great.
Yeah.
So I think it's like bottom of niche. It's nowhere near void.
Okay. Yeah, I see your point. The thing is, I've always filled up my endless spell slots. If we had more endless spells, maybe. But like, I mean, while we're on that topic, what are the top 3 endless spells? You take one of, like, let's say Tome of Eyes or Burning Sigil, and then you're taking Portal, and then what's your other choice?
So yeah, the third one is a bit dependent, but I think Portal is almost necessary because some matchups just turn around because you have Portal, like against KO, stopping the Thunderers. That's something you could do with Portal. So I think Portal is necessary. I think you take either Tome of Eyes or Sigil, and then it's just dependent on points and what you want to do. Do you want to Pendulum for some more mortal wounds, or Jaws for some more mortal wounds, or sometimes you take both Sigil and Tome. It's a bit dependent. I don't think Cogs is that good anymore. Sometimes you see Geminids, but we have Arcane Suggestion, so that also is not... Yeah, I think you always take 2 endless spells, namely one of the book ones and Portal, but the third one is a bit more up in the air.
Cogs is a good way to guarantee that you get that battle tactic, though, right? Or to enable a 2-caster to become a 3-caster. So
yeah, but it's expensive, and so I don't know. I just don't think that having that as your chance to do, because if you're gonna spend the points on Cogs, why not just spend the points to upgrade Lord of Change to Kairos?
Yeah. Okay. Fair enough.
I don't think, because Chronomatic Cogs is 50, so you pay 10 more points and you get always a 3-cast, you get extra Destiny dice, just pay the points or upgrade a Magister to a Curseling. I think the points can be spent better somewhere else.
Okay. Well, we've covered all the official War Scrolls that should be in the book. Is there any War Scroll you want to talk about? You've mentioned the Incarnate a bit. Is there anything else that Tzeentch has easy access to that you feel like should be discussed in this kind of list? I don't have an icon for it, but
I think it's mainly like the main thing is the Incarnate, and but yeah, the Incarnate is just it's a tricky discussion because it requires a lot of finesse to use well, and I hate that we kind of have to use it. I dislike that entire idea, but just having an unkillable thing that can stop entire armies, and you can literally just shove it into someone and it cannot die and they cannot retreat, and it does some cool damage. I don't know. Incarnate would go in awesome, but I don't like that we have to play the Incarnate, or that one of the best strategies is to use the Incarnate.
Right.
Some of the other units that see some play, Ferengard,
Yeah.
Bliss Barbs, maybe chosen, but they're all not like really worth talking about. They're like an option that sometimes sees play.
Sure. Yeah. Okay. So let's say the book in general, and this, I guess, we have to think about inside the meta a bit. Whereas I was trying to take the other things as more of an internal balance thing. Obviously, comparing the book doesn't make sense to the units. But now let's maybe think of the book in terms of not only the meta that's out there, all the other books, but also just how do we feel like this book compares to previous books of Tzeentch books too? Like, are you happy with this book? Let's start there. Just in internal against all the other battle tomes that we've seen for Tzeentch, do you feel like this is an improvement? Are you happy where the book sits in kind of a vacuum? Do you think they've creatively expressed Tzeentch in a way that feels like rewarding for the player, narratively in a sense?
I think the book is good. I like the book. I think the biggest problem with the book isn't the War Scrolls, it's the battle tactics and grand strategy. Because they are so amazing, it means that we score too many points, or more points than we should. So all our units are going up. So it's become an even more feast or famine army. And yeah, so I think like all the War Scrolls are very good. I like a lot of the things. I think the subfactions could use some work, mainly outside of like the casting heavy things. But I think lots of units are good, especially an improvement over last book. where you only really saw the demon half, and that's about it. You sometimes saw like an Ogroid, but yeah, now I think it's definitely an improvement. Some units could use some work. I think the Flamers just need a redesign from the ground up for what they want to do, to make them actually balanceable. But yeah, I think overall the book is solid. I think this season is not that great for us, but I think it's a solid book.
What about the control element of Tzeentch? This has been something that people have often referenced as kind of like if it were Magic the Gathering, if we're talking about Magic the Gathering, it'd be like a blue control deck, and it obviously helps that the army's largely blue for making people think that. But I don't know if it's actually the most control-y of the armies that are out there right now. Do you feel like it should fit that description? Like it should fit into that prototype? And if it should, how is it doing in accomplishing that mission? What kind of grade would you give it? Or do you feel like the army doesn't actually play that way anymore, and that's not really, like, are we using Bellicor that much anymore with a Tzeentch list? You know, you haven't mentioned him once yet, but that was a popular build for a while.
So I think it's always going to be like more control-y type list, or army, just because Magic is more of a control strategy. Because of the summoning, it starts also to become a more control strategy. I think there are at least 2, maybe 3 armies that do the control strategy better at the moment, which is Khorne and Nurgle. They just do it better, but that's also mainly because of the realm rules. Like primal dice are just better for unbinding than for casting, and we need to get our spells off. So that's just kind of rough. And just the anti-magic from OBR and Khorne, that's just like Khorne is just a rough matchup. But I think overall, I don't know. Overall, I think it's just we're solid. The main thing is also it's a very high skill ceiling book. So if you're Caleb Walters and you pilot this all the time, you can do amazing. But you have to get the reps in. You have to be real solid with your movement, because if you make a mistake, you're just over. It's just your castle is going to fall apart. You make a movement mistake, someone gets in, and you're just done. So I think it has very high highs, but I think it also has very low lows.
Sure. And then, like, in looking at the meta with the GHB, the Magic season right now, obviously the 3 big contenders for biggest Magic armies are us, Lumineth, and Seraphon. Where do we sit? Like, Lumineth has gotten hit pretty hard with the Magic season, especially Techless, because he can't ever get higher and use Primal Dice. Where do you think we sit in terms of how roughly impacted we've been with the Khornes, the Null Myriads in the world that have also entered the meta around this time, and then also with Primal Dice benefiting Unbinders, as you just referenced? Did we get hit pretty hard? Do we have enough output without having to rely on our Magic to be able to get through? I mean, where do we sit in this, and how much better are we? Where do we sit relative to those other 2 armies at the moment? And once all those rules fall off and we just go to like a basic set, do we end up taking the top? Is Seraphon still better than us in Starborn? Where's all this kind of balancing out?
So I think we use the Blizzard and Horfrost. I think we use it some of the best in the game, because Cult Demagogue with Blizzard is just kind of amazing. Just being saying to your opponent, "Hey, I can always Blizzard from this dude. You cannot stop this." It automatically goes off. That's real good. Horfrost on the Enlightened and on the normal Footsangur, pretty solid. But just the Unbinding, that's kind of rough. And it's just that over the past year, we've just seen points go up and up and up. So we're now just very expensive for what you get. And yeah, with the Khorne and Null Myriad coming up, it's a little bit rough. I think we're worse than Seraphon, because Seraphon just do 1 million mortal wounds. And Seraphon, like a big thing, as I mentioned earlier, Magical Dominance turn 1 is a big tactic, and Seraphon just always shut it off. So I think they're more of a control army than Tzeentch at the moment. Lumineth is a rough one, because Lumineth, it won the World Championships, but I think it's also as such as Tzeentch, it has a very high ceiling but a very low floor. I think we're roughly on par with Lumineth. But yeah, we're currently like somewhere in the middle of the meta. We're nowhere near as good as we were 6 or 12 months ago, but it's still a solid book.
Okay. Speaking of the book, where are we putting it? Where would you... If again, it doesn't really rank to these guys, but we can just put it on one of the tiers.
Yeah, I think in solid. I think it's with all the nerfs, we're no longer strong or awesome as we were. When the book launched, it was definitely awesome. It was way too good. The points were too good. The season was just that's what you wanted. But now with the nerfs and with the primal dice season not being that amazing, I think it's a solid book. It just requires a lot of skill to pilot well.
Okay, so take a quick look at the list and see if there's anything you want to move around before we freeze this output here.
No, I think I'm kind of happy. Like, yeah, you can swap some things around, but I'm happy where most things are, especially in the tier or like relative to other stuff. I think, I think most of the stuff is very good.
Awesome. Yeah, I feel like this was a real productive chat. Hopefully you had a good time. Hopefully Sneaky Beak is pleased. We went for very long here, and I think that's good. To have some good quality long content about something that's not Lumineth on this channel is always good. Hugo, thank you so much for being here. Really appreciate it. And just a reminder to everyone back home, hit the subscribe, like, and all that other good stuff. Comment down below. Hugo will probably be around to keep checking the channel. I'll let you know, too, if someone posts something that's a question for you. You can find him in the Discord. What's your name in the Discord?
My name is Horsies in Discord. I am active in the Stratago Discord, but I'm also very active in the AOS Coach Discord. I sometimes speak in the Tzeentch Discord, but you can always tag me, and otherwise you can leave a comment, and I'll answer over there.
Awesome. Thanks so much for being here, buddy. And we'll look forward to having you on again some other time in the future, especially if we get a new book. All right.
Yeah.
Cool. Until next time, guys, Ryan out.